Chapter 1354. 10 times. But, Zhao Shimu was dumbfounded. He stammered for a long time without being able to say anything. How many spiritual crystals did he spend to hire Guan Weikai? Yes, 10 times. At that time, the Zhao family rented Guan Weikai for 1,000 spiritual crystals. So now you have to pay 10 times that amount. That's a total of 10,000 spiritual crystals. Take a look at the terms yourself. Lu Huaishui said calmly as he pointed at the clause that he had marked out. Zhao Shimu's face turned red. He looked like a goose that had been strangled by the neck. He lowered his head and read the terms on the contract. When Zhao Shimu was signing the contract, he was fooled by the salesperson who had come to do the promotion. He only knew that he would be able to take advantage of the contract if he signed it. He did not read the content of the contract carefully. Now that he had read the clause that had been marked out, he immediately regretted it. What? 10,000 spiritual crystals. While Zhao Shimu was cursing his bad luck, Zhao Xingxuan could not take it anymore. He slammed the table and shouted angrily, "Outrageous! Brother Guan was obviously beaten to death by the Qin family. Instead of looking for trouble with them, why are you asking us for compensation? Furthermore, you are asking us for so many spiritual crystals. Do you really think that the Zhao family is weak and can be bullied easily?" After threatening Lu Huaishui, Zhao Xingxuan crushed the cup in his hand into powder. He immediately revealed his cultivation of level 6 of the Golden Core stage. He stared coldly at Lu Huaishui like a lion that was about to devour its prey. Hee, old Mr. Zhao, don't we all come out to do business for money? Why do we have to hurt each other's friendship for a few spiritual crystals? Lu Huaishui said calmly as if he did not feel Zhao Xingxuan's killing intent. He stared at the mahogany table in front of him without moving an inch. Zhao Xingxuan thought that Lu Huaishui lowered his head because he did not dare to look at him. His aura rose and he said fiercely, "Cut the crap. Either you go to the Qin family and ask for the 10,000 spiritual crystals, or you leave this place immediately." Old Mr. Zhao, are you joking? Lu Huaishui finally raised his head and glanced at Zhao Xingxuan. A trace of hostility flashed between his brows. He snapped his fingers again and a disdainful smile appeared on his face. He slowly said, "Besides, do you really think that the Immortal Cultivation Chamber of Commerce is afraid of a mere Zhao family?" As soon as he finished speaking, the two bodyguards behind Lu Huaishui immediately rushed forward and stood in front of him. At the same time, their bodies trembled and a majestic yuan qi covered their bodies. One of them was an expert at the Golden Core stage and the other had already reached the half-step nascent soul stage. Feeling the ferocious pressure pressing down on him like a towering mountain, Zhao Xingxuan's expression changed drastically. Only now did he realize that he had underestimated the other party's strength. Seeing that the situation was so unfavorable to him, Zhao Xingxuan did not dare to act rashly. He could only clench his fists in hatred, snort coldly and grit his teeth as he took a step back. Director Lu, let's talk this over." Cold sweat dripped down Zhao Shimu's forehead as he explained with difficulty, "It's not that the Zhao family is unwilling to compensate, but 10,000 spirit crystals is too much. Furthermore, our great-uncle was right. Senior Guan was indeed killed by Xiao Chang. You can investigate this matter and find out. You can't just punish us and let the culprit go, right?" Zhao Shimu's expression was very helpless. After all, the Zhao family's annual income was only 20,000 to 30,000 spirit crystals. They would have to fork out more than half of that. Not only would they be strapped for cash, but the living expenses of this large family would also be a problem. The two of you don't have to be so afraid. I haven't finished speaking." Seeing Zhao Xingxuan and Zhao Shimu's fierce and then timid expressions, Lu Huaishui was very pleased. He smiled and said, "Mr. Zhao, I guess you didn't read the additional terms in the contract, right?" "I really didn't read it." Zhao Shimu hesitated for a moment before nodding his head. He felt uneasy. Could it be that the additional terms required more compensation? That's right. Lu Huaishui had a subtle smile on his face as he deliberately paused for a moment. When Zhao Xingxuan and Zhao Shimu were at their most nervous, he slowly said, "The additional terms mentioned that if the expert rented by Party A is killed by someone else due to his lack of strength, then Party A only needs to pay 50% of the compensation, and the rest will be paid by the killer. So, the Zhao family only needs to pay 5,000 spirit crystals?" Zhao Shimu couldn't be bothered to reprimand Lu Huaishui, who was smiling like a clown. He grabbed the contract on the table and immediately flipped through it. On the last page of the contract, Zhao Shimu found this clause. He finally let out a long breath and wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. Turning his head to look at Zhao Xingxuan, Zhao Shimu saw him nod slightly. Zhao Shimu then nodded to Lu Huaishui and said, "Since the contract is as such, the Zhao clan is willing to compensate for this loss. At the same time, I hope that you can send another person to replace Senior Guan. If it's a nascent soul cultivator, that would be the best." Although 5,000 spirit crystals was a large sum for the Zhao family, under the current situation, Zhao Shimu couldn't bargain with them anymore. After all, the Immortal Cultivation Chamber of Commerce was an existence that the Zhao family couldn't afford to offend. Zhao Shimu couldn't ask for more than 5,000 spirit crystals to settle this matter and disgust the Qin family. Since they had reached an agreement, Zhao Shimu didn't procrastinate anymore. He decisively asked someone to prepare the spirit crystals and handed them over with both hands. After Lu Huaishui confirmed the number of spirit crystals, he threw them to the bodyguard and stood up to extend his hand. He put on a sincere smile and said, "Mr. Zhao is indeed straightforward. It's also an honor for our Chamber of Commerce to be able to work closely with the Zhao family." "Director Lu, you're too kind." Zhao Shimu watched as the 5,000 spirit crystals fell into the bodyguard's bag. Although he felt his heart ache, he still forced himself to put on a warm attitude and awkwardly shook Lu Huaishui's hand. Lu Huaishui put down Zhao Shimu's hand and said with a warm expression, "As for Guan Weicai sect, I will think of a way to help you deal with it. This is also the obligation of the second party in our contract, so you don't have to worry about this for the time being." "Thank you so much." Zhao Shimu's voice finally sounded a little happier this time, and the smile on his face was more sincere. Then about sending reinforcements, Lu Huaishui adjusted his collar and turned to look out the door. "Right now we still have to go to the Qin family to ask for compensation and terminate this contract. It won't be too late to discuss sending reinforcements later." Chapter 1355. Yes. Director Lu is right. I will immediately bring you to the Qin family to ask for an explanation. This time they must pay the price. Zhao Shimu nodded repeatedly. He did not dare to delay and took a few steps forward. Then he suddenly thought of something and turned to look at Zhao Xingxuan. "Great-grandfather, why don't you wait in the house first? Director Lu and I will be back soon. I will report the situation to you then." "Alright, you guys go. I'm going back to cultivate." Zhao Xingxuan waved his hand disinterestedly. He, who had just lost face in front of Lu Huaishui, was naturally not interested in going with them. He responded casually and left in a huff. When Zhao Shimu, Lu Huaishui, and the others had just stepped out of the Zhao family's main gate, Qin Xingling and Xiao Chen were in the Qin family's guest hall, listening to the information that their subordinates had sent back from different places. Although the Qin family had already deployed people in a few small towns nearby, no matter how much they asked, they could not find the whereabouts of Cheng Menjiang and the others. The news that came back made Xiao Chen a little disappointed. He did not know where they were in the vast immortal cultivation world, nor did he know where to start looking. "Immortal Xiao, why don't I get them to go to Luxian Prefecture to ask around?" After listening to everyone's reports, Qin Shengling frowned and asked in a low voice, "After all, there are many people there. There will be more merchants coming and going. Who knows, maybe we can find out the whereabouts of your friends. What do you think?" Whenever he thought about how Xiao Chang had done so much for the Qin family, but he could not even do such a small thing as find them, Qin Shengling felt very guilty. Xiao Chen thought for a while, nodded, and said somewhat helplessly, "All right, that's all we can do. Thank you, old Master Qin. I did not expect that I would cause so much trouble for you after only coming to Yanlin town for a few days. I feel quite bad about it. Immortal Xiao, you are treating me like an outsider. To be able to do things for Immortal Xiao, it is a supreme honor for the Qin family." Qin Shengling waved his hand and said gratefully, "Moreover, you helped us deal with the Zhao family. The Qin family's income has increased several times compared to previous years. We should be thanking you." Due to Zhao Wendeng making a ruckus at the Qin clan last time, not only did he not succeed in extorting them, he even allowed Xiao Chen to take the opportunity to ridicule him and flee with his tail between his legs. These matters were witnessed by the people and merchants of Yanlin town, to the extent that many merchants believed that the Zhao clan was already at its end, and they decisively threw out an olive branch to the Qin clan one after another. "Old Patriarch Qin, you flatter me," Xiao Chen said modestly. Then he touched his nose in puzzlement and asked, "By the way, where has Taodian been these days? Could it be that he was also sent to other places to look for people?" Ever since he killed the people from the Zhao family, Xiao had not seen any trace of Qin Taotian for a long time. Originally, this kid had always surrounded him and tried to please him. Now that he was suddenly gone, Xiao could not help but feel a little unaccustomed. Not really. Qin Shengling shook his head and explained with a smile, it's like this. Recently, a lot of merchants have come to our Qin clan to cooperate. I thought that Taotian's father has not fully recovered, and he may not have the energy to deal with people. Since Taotian will take over the Qin clan's business sooner or later, I simply let him talk to those merchants first and gain experience at the same time. Xiao nodded in understanding. Just as he was about to praise him, a servant suddenly ran in from outside in a hurry. The two of them turned their heads and saw that the servant hurriedly saluted. He lowered his head and said carefully, Master Zhao Shimu, the head of the Zhao clan, is now outside the gate. He said that he wants to see you by name, and he has brought a few strangers with him. They look aggressive and seem to want to harm our Qin clan. Qin Shengling slammed the table heavily and stood up from the chair. He said angrily, Why is it this kid again? Hasn't he learned enough from the lesson from the past few days? He actually dares to bring people to cause trouble. Isn't he looking down on our Qin clan too much? Old master, there's no need to be too angry. Since Zhao Shimu wants to court death, let's go out and meet him. Xiao Qin stood up and stretched. He grinned and said, I'm quite curious to know what tricks he plans to play this time. From Xiao Qin's point of view, this Zhao clan was a bunch of people who did not learn their lesson. He might as well get rid of them all at once this time, lest they come to cause trouble for the Qin clan every now and then. Ah. Xiao Chang, although you're young, I didn't expect you to be so arrogant. Do you really think that our Zhao clan can't do anything to you? Before Xiao Qin and Qin Shengling could leave the guest hall, a voice suddenly rang out from outside the door. With a mocking voice, Zhao Shimu swaggered in with Director Lu and the rest. Zhao Shimu, who was walking at the front, pushed away the servant who was blocking the way. Caught off guard, the servant was pushed back a few steps and fell to the ground. However, he also knew that the Zhao family had always been overbearing, so he didn't dare to have any complaints. He could only endure the pain and climb up, standing obediently on the side. Zhao Shimu led Lu Huaishui into the hall and then casually sat in the guest seat. Lu Huaishui sat in the main seat and leisurely crossed his legs. He narrowed his eyes and scanned everyone present. Who allowed you to? Qin Shengling was about to explode in anger when he was interrupted by Lu Huaishui. Mr. Zhao, was Guan Weikai killed by this kid? Lu Huaishui's gaze finally stopped on Xiao Qin. A trace of viciousness flashed in his eyes. That's right. Zhao Shimu pointed at Xiao Qin and introduced him seriously. Don't be fooled by his young age. His attacks were extremely vicious. He killed Senior Guan without asking any questions. He used a strange spell to kill Senior Guan. We couldn't stop him in time. Zhao Shimu? What's wrong with you? How dare you come to our house and spout nonsense? Is exalted immortal Xiao someone you can insult? Before Xiao Qin could speak, Qin Shengling jumped up and shouted at Zhao Shimu. Zhao Shimu glanced at Qin Shengling. His eyes were filled with pride. He smiled coldly and added, However, as far as I know, Xiao Chang is only a watchdog hired by the Qin clan. Qin Shengling, that old thing, is the real mastermind. Director Lu, don't let him off. If that's the case, things will be easy. Lu Huaishui raised his eyebrows and slammed the contract on the table. Chapter 1356. Qin Shengling had been glaring at Zhao Shimu, but when he heard Lu Huaishui's words, he turned to look at him. He wanted to see what this weirdly dressed man had to say. Xiao Qin stood behind Qin Shengling, not in a hurry to speak. He looked at the people in front of him with great interest. He took a few more glances at Lu Huaishui's clothes, feeling that they looked familiar. Lu Huaishui ignored Xiao Qin's stare. Instead, he picked his ear with his left pinky and said calmly, According to the terms of the contract, if an employee of the Chamber of Commerce is killed due to personal grudges, the employer and the killer will each have to pay half of the compensation as compensation to the Chamber of Commerce. The Zhao family has already paid them. You can pay the rest. Ridiculous. Qin Shengling clenched his fists and a few veins popped on his forehead. He stared coldly at Director Lu and Zhao Shimu and said angrily, It was Zhao Shimu who provoked the Qin family first. That Guan guy was too weak, so he was killed by exalted deity Xiao. Why should I pay for the losses? This is simply ridiculous and preposterous. Old man Qin, I think you've lived so long in vain. Zhao Shimu stood up and walked to Lu Huaishui's side. He pointed at Qin Shengling angrily and said, A life for a life, a debt for a life. This is a matter of course. Don't you understand such a simple principle? Lu Huaishui was getting a little impatient. He stretched out his index finger and poked the contract a few times. He glanced sideways at Qin Shengling and said, "Old man, the contract is written very clearly. Please open your presbyopic eyes and take a good look. It's okay if you can't read or understand the content. All you need to know is that you have to pay 5,000 spirit crystals." Nonsense. Why should I pay the spirit crystals? That surnamed Guan was obviously invited by the Zhao family. If anyone is going to compensate, it should be the Zhao family. Qin Shingling's eyes were about to pop out of their sockets as he roared in anger. "Old man, let me give you a piece of advice. If you don't take good care of yourself, your eyesight will deteriorate and your hearing will deteriorate." Lu Huaishui rolled his eyes and said angrily, "I've already said that the Zhao family has paid the compensation. Now it's your turn." "Exactly. It's already kind of me to ask the Qin family to pay some spiritual crystals." Zhao Shimu said sarcastically, "If you anger the Chamber of Commerce or the force behind Senior Guan, it's not something that can be solved with just a few spiritual crystals. Your entire Qin clan will disappear from the world of cultivators in an instant. Let me give you a piece of advice out of goodwill. Stop talking nonsense and hurry up and pay up." At this time, Zhao Shimu was standing beside Lu Huaishui showing off his prowess. He seemed to have completely forgotten that he and Granduncle Zhao were trembling and bowing in front of Lu Huaishui just now. However, it might also be because of this humiliation that Zhao Shimu planned to make up for it with Qin Shengling. "You!" Qin Shengling was so angry that his eyes were wide open. Just as he was about to teach Zhao Shimu a lesson, he suddenly felt someone patting his shoulder. He turned around and saw Xiaoqin smiling and saying softly to him, "Old Master Qin, please calm down. I'm quite interested in this contract. Let me take a look first." After saying that, Xiaoqin took a few steps forward, reached out to take the contract on the table and flipped through it. Although Qin Shengling was still very angry in his heart, since Immortal Xiao had said so, he could only suppress his anger for the time being. After all, he knew that he did not understand this aspect at all. He also knew that the Zhao family must have come prepared this time. Therefore, he could only wait patiently for Xiaoqin to finish reading the contract. Staring at the contract in his hand, he repeatedly read it a few times. The more Xiaoqin looked at it, the more he felt that it was inexplicable. This contract was actually made according to the standards of the secular world. Not only did it include Party A and Party B, but it also included the responsibilities and obligations that both parties had to bear, as well as the penalties for breach of contract. There was also the date of signing and the signatures of all parties. It looked very proper and very formal. However, after reading it back and forth a few times, Xiaoqin found that there were many overbearing clauses in it. The entire contract was very beneficial to the Chamber of Commerce. It could even be said that the benefits were completely skewed. Glancing at the arrogant Zhao Shimu, Xiaoqin pursed his lips. This kind of contract that was commonly seen in the secular world was indeed very new in the world of immortal cultivation. These people naturally did not understand the mystery behind it. It seemed that the group of idiots from the Zhao family had also been deceived. But why would such a secular contract appear in the world of immortal cultivation? Xiaoqin had extremely strong doubts in his heart. However, before he could ask, Lu Huaishui attacked first. "May I ask if you have finished reading it?" Lu Huaishui stared at Xiaoqin, who was constantly flipping through the contract. He frowned and urged, "Do you see the agreements that I have underlined? Please pay us 5,000 spirit crystals according to the agreement in the contract." "What the hell did you write?" Xiaoqin collected his thoughts and pinched the corner of the contract with his hand. He shook it a few times and said disdainfully, "This contract only has legal effect on the two parties who signed it. The Qin family did not sign or put their stamp on the contract, so they did not establish a labor relationship with you at all. What the hell are you giving it to us for?" Who said that?" Lu Huaishui was stunned and subconsciously argued, "It is written that if the hired cultivator is killed, the killer and the employer will have to pay half of the compensation. I'll compensate you, my ass. This contract has nothing to do with us. Don't try to fool us." Xiaoqin snorted coldly. He raised his index finger and shook it slightly. Immediately, a cluster of red dancing flames leaped up from his fingertip. Lu Huaishui was shocked when he saw Xiaoqin's action. He was about to say something to stop him, but it was too late. He saw that Xiaoqin had casually set the contract in his hand on fire. The thin pieces of paper instantly turned into ashes. "What the hell? How dare you burn the contract?" Lu Huaishui was furious. He immediately jumped up from his chair and pointed at Xiaoqin, shouting, Are you crazy? Do you want the experts of our Chamber of Commerce to set your bones? As he roared, Lu Huaishui signaled the two bodyguards behind him with his eyes. When the two bodyguards received the signal, they immediately flipped the table in front of them and rushed forward. They revealed their cultivation and confronted Xiao Chen in an overbearing manner. As long as they waited for Lu Huaishui's order, they planned to directly break the neck of the fair-skinned boy in front of them. However, Xiao Chen didn't take the threats of the two bodyguards seriously at all. He casually dusted off the paper in his hand, glanced at Lu Huaishui and coldly asked, "Also, what is this der Immortal Cultivation Chamber of Commerce of Party B on the contract?" Chapter 1357. Hearing Xiao Chen's question, Lu Huaishui immediately straightened his chest and said proudly, "This is the name of our Chamber of Commerce. Our Chamber of Commerce has branches all over the world, and our business covers." Before Lu Huaishui finished speaking, Xiao Chen immediately interrupted him and asked, "If that's the case, may I ask who the legal representative of your Chamber of Commerce is? Does it have a business license? Has it been recorded in the Bureau of Industry and Commerce? If not, you are a fake company and you have to bear legal responsibility, you know?" "What legal representative?" Lu Huaishui blinked his eyes in confusion. He had no idea what Xiao Chen was talking about. Lu Huaishui himself was also a person from the Immortal Cultivation world. After entering the Immortal Cultivation Chamber of Commerce, he went through systematic training so he could fool people when he went out to do business. As a result, he didn't expect to meet a weirdo like Xiao Chen today. The terms he used seemed to be more professional than him. Lu Huaishui was completely confused. F***CK, you don't even know the legal representative, and you dare to open such a big company? It seems that your boss is quite bold. Xiao Chen exclaimed. He couldn't help but feel angry and funny at the same time. When he saw the contract just now, Xiao Chen was thinking about it. The name seemed to be similar to a certain taxi-hailing software in the secular world. After all, such a strange name could only be known by people in the secular world. Since it could spread in the Immortal Cultivation world, the behind-the-scenes boss of this company must be from the secular world. However, thinking of this, Xiao Chen was a little puzzled. Judging from this formal contract and the introduction of Director Lu just now, this Immortal Cultivation Chamber of Commerce should have been established for some years. It didn't seem like it was established by people who had just entered the Immortal Cultivation world. Xiao Chen remembered that among the people who entered the Immortal Cultivation world with him, the Immortal Cultivation sect and the Ghost Cultivation sect were in the martial arts world. They didn't know about the taxi-hailing software at all. Only Qing Minjing and the other women from the secular world and Yu Shaochuan would know about it. However, they were the same as him. They had just entered the Immortal Cultivation world not long ago. How could they establish such a strange chamber of commerce? If he were to speculate further, Shishan Giant Ox had come in before, but judging from his attitude towards him later, he probably didn't mix well in the Immortal Cultivation world, so he shouldn't have done it. Could it be Situ Qitian who had destroyed the teleportation formation? This old fellow didn't seem to have the ability to do so. Xiao Chen thought about it and couldn't help but be puzzled. He wanted to probe this Director Lu in front of him with a few words, but this guy seemed to have no concept of some professional terms in the secular world. Apart from knowing the contract and wearing the uniform, it seemed that he didn't know any more in-depth content. He wanted to ask a few more questions, but Xiao Chen was somewhat hesitant. This Immortal Cultivator's Chamber of Commerce seemed to be quite large. He had just entered the Immortal Cultivation world, so he didn't know whether the other party was a friend or a foe. If he revealed that he was from the secular world too early, he might attract the attention of people with ulterior motives. Originally, Xiao Chen planned to keep a low profile for a while and gradually explore the mystery of the Immortal Cultivation world. If he followed this clue, it would be easy to alert the enemy. While Xiao Chen was thinking intensely in his mind, Lu Huaishui waved his hand impatiently and said, "Okay, don't talk about those useless things. Your Qin family should give me a straightforward answer today. Do you want to compensate for the spirit crystals or not?" "Compensate your mother. A chamber of commerce without a legal person doesn't have any legal effect at all. Are you here to be funny?" Xiao Chen had already made a decision at this time. For the time being, he would not explore the inside story behind this Immortal Cultivator's Chamber of Commerce. Hearing Lu Huaishui's words, he directly asked with a cold face, "I don't know what you mean by legal effect, but now it seems that your Qin family is not going to compensate, right?" Lu Huaishui was confused by Xiao Chen's professional jargon. He could not be bothered to think about it anymore, so he asked straightforwardly, Xiao Chen spread out his hands and answered Lu Huaishui with silence. Very well, since you don't want face, then don't blame me for not being polite. Lu Huaishui's face darkened. He turned to the two bodyguards and instructed, You two, go and cripple that brat who talks nonsense and that old thing from the Qin family. Then go and collect 5,000 spirit crystals. Watch out. The two bodyguards immediately shouted and rushed towards Xiao Chen and Qin Shengling. Before Lu Huaishui came to the Qin family, he had already understood the situation from Zhao Shimu. He knew that the Qin family's master, Qin Shengling, was only at the peak of the foundation establishment stage, while Xiao Chen was said to be slightly stronger. Therefore he had arranged the division of labor in advance. The bodyguard at the peak of the golden core stage was responsible for dealing with Qin Shengling, while the other one who was half a step into the original infant stage was responsible for attacking Xiao Chen. When Qin Shengling saw the two of them suddenly attacking him, his expression changed. He wasn't sure how strong Exalted Immortal Xiao was, so he could only retreat a few steps in a hurry. When Qin Shengling turned his head to look, he saw that Exalted Immortal Xiao was still smiling. He stood motionless in the same spot, looking very relaxed. He couldn't help but turn pale with fright. He thought to himself, what's going on with Exalted Immortal Xiao? Could it be that he already has a way to deal with it? When Zhao Shimu saw this scene, he laughed coldly. From his point of view, Xiao Chang was so afraid that he couldn't even move. No matter how strong he was, he couldn't deal with two cultivators at the peak of the golden core stage at the same time. Moreover, one of them was half a step into the original infant stage. Actually, this time, Zhao Shimu had the intention of killing with a borrowed knife. He hoped that the Qin family wouldn't be willing to pay the spirit crystals. If they paid the spirit crystals obediently, they would only be injured for a while. They would recover after a period of rest. If they didn't pay, then the Chamber of Commerce of Immortal Cultivators was not to be trifled with. Regardless of whether it was Xiao Chang or Qin Shengling, as long as one of them was seriously injured or died, the Qin family would be finished. However, in the next moment, the smile on Zhao Shimu's face froze. His expression also became distorted. This was because everything that had happened in front of him had changed too quickly. He couldn't react at all. The two bodyguards who were pouncing towards Xiao Chang and Qin Shengling suddenly paused in midair. Then they turned around to face each other. The bodyguard at the peak of the golden core stage suddenly attacked and punched the other bodyguard. At the same time, the bodyguard who was half a step into the original infant stage heavily slapped him with his palm. After each of them suffered a blow, the two of them didn't stop. They continued to fight each other, inexplicably killing each other. Bang bang. Two muffled sounds could be heard. The peak of the golden core stage bodyguard's lower abdomen was hit by a vicious palm. The bodyguard who was half a step into the original infant stage's chest was hit by a solid punch. The two of them were sent flying a few feet away by the strong impact. They landed heavily on the ground and both spat out a mouthful of blood. Their faces were ashen. Chapter 1358. Lu Huaishui was also dumbfounded. It took him a long time to come to his senses. He was so angry that he jumped up and down. Pointing at them, he scolded, "What the hell are you doing? I asked you to beat up the people of the Qin family. Why did you kill each other?" "I don't know. Just now, I suddenly felt that my body was out of control, so I hit them." "Me too. Just now, I felt that my head was in a mess. I can't remember what happened." The two bodyguards propped themselves up and looked at each other in confusion. It was difficult for them to describe the situation just now, but because it was the first time they had encountered such a situation, they didn't know how to explain it for a while. "Lu, you brought these two idiots to the Qin family. First, you asked us to see the *T contract that had nothing to do with it. Now, you asked them to put on a farce of killing each other in front of us. What do you mean? Do you want us to give you a reward or something?" Xiao Qin sneered with his arms crossed. At first, Xiao Qin wasn't sure if he could use his mental strength to control cultivators. However, after experimenting, it was obvious that this method was feasible. He felt relieved. It seemed that he would have another life-saving skill in the world of cultivators in the future. But Lu Huaishui was rendered speechless by Xiao Chen's words. He had no idea why his two bodyguards had suddenly started fighting each other. Now that they were both seriously injured, they probably couldn't do anything to the Qin family anymore. "What do you mean by this and that? Isn't it written in the contract that you are the director of the marketing department? Didn't your boss teach you to speak clearly when you are running a business? You can't stammer, right? Otherwise, you will leave a bad impression on the customers." Xiao Qin interrupted him impatiently. Alright, do you have anything else to say or not? If not, just get out of here. How could Lu Huaishui be willing to leave? His mind spun quickly. Suddenly, his eyes lit up as if he had recalled something. He hurriedly said, although the Qin family didn't sign an official contract with the Chamber of Commerce, Guan Weikai was killed by you. You have to bear secondary responsibility. So, you still have to pay the Chamber of Commerce 5,000 crystals as compensation. After saying that, Lu Huaishui secretly heaved a sigh of relief. He recalled that on the first day he entered the Cultivation Chamber of Commerce, he had participated in an eloquence training. One of the lessons talked about the difference between primary and secondary responsibilities. At that time he didn't pay much attention to it, but he didn't expect it to come in handy today. Since you know we didn't sign the contract, why are you asking us to take responsibility? Xiao Qin glared at Lu Huaishui and said angrily, where on earth did you learn this nonsense? If you really think that we are responsible, then go to court and sue me. At this point, Xiao Qin couldn't be bothered to talk nonsense with this half-baked guy anymore. After casually ordering his men to send the guest off, he turned around and planned to leave the living room. Wait. Seeing that Xiao Qin was in a hurry to leave, Lu Huaishui thought that he was trying to escape and immediately stepped forward to stop him. Is there anything else? Why are you so troublesome? Xiao Qin's patience was almost worn out. Although Lu Huaishui didn't know what the court that Xiao Qin mentioned was, he still gritted his teeth and threatened him. Do you know what will happen to you if you offend the Cultivation Chamber of Commerce? Oh, I don't know and I don't want to know. Xiao Qin shook his head. It seemed that Lu Huaishui was used to living a comfortable life and couldn't even see the situation in front of him clearly. Seeing that Xiao Qin was so stubborn, Lu Huaishui felt a headache coming on. He grabbed Xiao Qin's clothes and said fiercely, if the Qin family doesn't take out 10,000 spirit crystals as compensation today, don't even think about having a good life in the future. Say, is your head pierced? Xiao Qin looked at Lu Huaishui with an inexplicable expression and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He said, just now you said that you would pay 5,000 crystals and in the blink of an eye, you raised it to 10,000 crystals. It seems that the business of your Cultivation Chamber of Commerce is quite good. No wonder you opened such a big business. While Xiao Qin ridiculed him, he thought, is this how the Cultivation Chamber of Commerce makes money? The people in the world of cultivators are too stupid. Of course I'm not talking nonsense. Lu Huaishui sneered and immediately retorted, my men were injured in the Qin family, so you have to pay 5,000 crystals for medical expenses. In addition to the compensation for killing Guan Weikai, it's a total of 10,000 crystals. I think you are the one with a bad brain. Don't you know the logic of 1 + 1 = 2? Lu Huaishui already knew that Xiao Qin would ask this question, so he had already thought of an answer in advance. At this moment he felt that he was very quick-witted. Xiao Qin was not angry at all. Instead, he smiled warmly and stretched out his hand in front of Lu Huaishui. He said slowly, I see. If you calculate it according to your magical logic, then please give me 100,000 crystals as compensation. Ah, Xiao Chang, are you crazy? Why should I give you so many crystals? Lu Huaishui was stunned at first, then he couldn't help but laugh. He felt that Xiao Qin was definitely a lunatic. He reckoned that something must have gone wrong when he was cultivating, causing him to go berserk and become like this. It's simple, I'll calculate it for you. Xiao Qin said calmly, just now when you came in, you knocked over a servant of the Qin family for no reason. He was seriously injured because of this. Then your men fought with each other and flipped over the tables and chairs of the Qin family. I rented these tables and chairs to the Qin family. Although I didn't sign a contract with you, you still have to bear responsibility. As for the compensation for losing my youth and framing, I won't settle it with you for now. So don't talk nonsense. Hurry up and pay the crystals. As Xiao Qin analyzed the situation to Lu Huaishui's face turned green and white. He was obviously angry. The servant who was knocked over was very smart. He was originally standing in the corner, but when he heard Xiao Qin's words, he immediately fell to the ground. He held his stomach and shouted miserably, ouch, it hurts. I have an 80-year-old mother and a child waiting to be fed. After being kicked by you, I'm afraid I'll be bedridden. I won't be able to take care of them. TSK. Anyone who hears this will feel sad, and anyone who sees it will cry. This is too tragic. Xiao Qin looked at that person with sympathy, and then sighed helplessly. He turned to look at Lu Huaishui and said, it seems that you have to pay more crystals. Chapter 1359. That servant's injuries are not light. I'm afraid he won't be able to work for the rest of his life. Although the Qin family is kind and generous and will definitely pay him a sum of money, you can't get away with it. Since it's a joint responsibility, you'll have to pay another 50,000 spiritual crystals. Xiao Qin said decisively. Don't act like a grandson. You were just standing there and now you want to blackmail us? Do you really think I'm a fool? Lu Huaishui stomped his feet in anger. He pointed at Xiao Qian's nose and scolded, I'm not going to pay you. What can you do to me? Let me tell you, if you really piss me off, all of you will, Before Lu Huaishui could finish his sentence, Xiao Qian's hand, which was stretched out in front of him, suddenly changed its posture. He grabbed Lu Huaishui's neck and lifted him off the ground. Then a faint wave of primordial qi gradually covered Xiao Qian's body. He stared at Lu Huaishui with a murderous look in his eyes and sneered, Say it, why don't you continue? I'd like to hear what you can do if I really piss you off. Xiao Qian. I was just, joking, please let me go. I'll pay you the spiritual crystals, Director Lu coughed a few times and replied with difficulty as he felt a strong sense of suffocation. Feeling the pressure released by Xiao Qian, Lu Huaishui couldn't help but feel a chill in his heart. Although he still couldn't figure out Xiao Qian's cultivation level, the strong pressure made him unable to resist at all. If you said that earlier, there wouldn't have been so much trouble, right? Xiao Qian snorted. He loosened his fingers and threw Director Lu to the ground. Lu Huaishui lay on the ground and covered his neck with his hands. His face was pale and he took a few deep breaths. He felt as if he had come back from the brink of death. Xiao Qian looked down at Lu Huaishui and said calmly, I guess you don't have that many spiritual crystals on you. How about this? I'll give you 3 days to gather all the spiritual crystals and send them to the Qin family. Otherwise, I'll go find Zhao Shimu to settle the score. At that time, I'll ask for interest. After that, Xiao Qian ignored the horrified eyes of Lu Huaishui and turned to Qin Shengling and left the parlor with him. Although he had taught Lu Huaishui a harsh lesson, the doubts in Xiao Qian's heart only increased. Looking at the strength of the two bodyguards, one was at the peak of the gold core stage and the other was infinitely close to the nascent soul stage. Experts with such strength were actually only guards for someone. The background of this immortal cultivation chamber of commerce seemed to be extremely deep. Xiao Qian tried to ask Qin Shengling a few questions, but he realized that he did not know much about this chamber of commerce. He only knew that it was spread all over the immortal cultivation world and had many businesses. However, because the fees were more expensive, the Qin clan had never come into contact with it. After pondering for a long time, Xiao Qian decided to keep his doubts in his heart and keep a low profile for the time being. The most important thing right now was to find Qing Menjing and the others. As for the situation of the immortal cultivation chamber of commerce, he could only put it aside for the time being. Once he had a firm foothold in the immortal cultivation world, he would have time to inquire about it. At this time, Qin Shengling was extremely shocked. He felt that not only was Xiao Chang's strength profound, but he also knew everything. With a few words, he was able to refute that Director Lu to the point of being speechless. Qin Shengling worshipped him even more. In the parlor, Lu Huaishui glared angrily at Xiao Qian's back as he left. He gritted his teeth and stood up. In his heart he thought to himself, Brat, this grudge between us is formed. What's so great about being stronger than me? Let's see how our Chamber of Commerce will deal with you later. Although he was angry, Lu Huaishui had no other way out. He could only leave the Qin family with his injured subordinates and Zhao Shimu. He planned to go back and report the situation to his superiors before thinking about the next step. After leaving the Qin family, Lu Huaishui was really angry. He directly reprimanded Zhao Shimu at the entrance of the Qin family's house. Then he angrily walked in the direction of the Zhao family. This scene was seen by the surrounding people once again, causing the Zhao family's reputation to suffer another blow. It directly fell to the bottom. Although Zhao Shimu was sullen, there was nothing he could do. He could only sullenly follow Lu Huaishui back to the Zhao family and wait for him to call the higher-ups of the immortal cultivation chamber of commerce for instructions. After Lu Huaishui arrived at the Zhao family, he did not delay any further. He immediately used the voice transmission talisman to call the higher-ups and briefly described what had happened today. He emphasized the words that Xiao Qian had said that he did not understand. The higher-ups of the Chamber of Commerce were also half-baked. After listening to the story, they were also very puzzled. They did not understand what Xiao Chang meant by the court and legal representative, nor did they understand why the two bodyguards would suddenly fight each other. They only expressed their shock at the situation that Lu Huaishui had encountered. At the moment they could not think of a suitable solution. They could only helplessly order Director Lu to wait at the Chamber of Commerce branch in Lucian County. After they reported the situation to the higher-ups, they would wait for further instructions. While Lu Huaishui was reporting, Zhao Shimu had already told the whole story to Zhao Xingxuan, who had rushed over. Zhao Xingxuan was stunned and did not recover for a long time. How is this Xiao Chang so powerful? Even the bodyguards of the Chamber of Commerce can't do anything to him. After the report, Director Lu put away the remaining voice transmission talismans. Then he stood up and solemnly warned Zhao Shimu, "Mr. Zhao, I have to go to the Chamber of Commerce branch in Lucian County first. Firstly, this is an order from the higher-ups. Secondly, I have to report the death of Guan Weicai's sect. I advise the Zhao family to be more obedient during this period of time. Don't rashly go against the Qin family." "You're leaving just like that?" Zhao Shimu was shocked. He hurriedly stopped Lu Huaishui and said, "But, Director Lu, if you leave just like that, what if Xiao Chang comes 3 days later to collect the debt? Why don't you send another expert to the Zhao family? Otherwise, our small family won't be able to deal with that guy." At this moment, Zhao Shimu could not help but feel extremely regretful. He originally wanted to use the power of the Dada Immortal Cultivation Chamber of Commerce to uproot the Qin family. In the end, he did not expect that he would go for wool and come home shorn. Instead, his family was ruthlessly cheated. Furthermore, he had signed the contract in black and white, so he had no choice but to give it to him. "You make it sound so easy. In such a short time, where am I going to find help for you?" Lu Huaishui rolled his eyes and said unhappily, "Furthermore, I have only received a portion of Guan Weicai's compensation. The Chamber of Commerce will have to pay the rest themselves. Our Chamber of Commerce's spirit crystals do not fall from the sky." Chapter 1360. Actually, what Lu Huaishui was most concerned about was where he could get the other portion of the compensation. After all, the contract clearly stated that he had to get back 10,000 spiritual crystals. However, he was still short of half of it. If something went wrong and the higher-ups asked him to pay for it, Lu Huaishui would lose more than he gained. "Director Lu, why don't you help us think of another way? You see, we've already paid the 5,000 spiritual crystals. You can't just leave us like this." Zhao Shimu pleaded with a bitter face. Lu Huaishui's eyes turned and he suddenly thought of an idea. He glanced at Zhao Shimu and said, "Why don't you give me another 5,000 spiritual crystals? I'll think of a way to help you. Who knows, we might really be able to invite a more powerful expert over." "Lu, you really like to demand an exorbitant price." When Zhao Xingxuan, who was standing at the side with his hands behind his back, heard this, he couldn't help but curse angrily. "Your Chamber of Commerce can't even deal with a brat who hasn't even grown his hair. Not only did you cause the Zhao family to lose face in Yanlin town, but you still dare to ask us to pay 5,000 spiritual crystals? I think you've gone crazy thinking about the spiritual crystals, right? Hee old thing, it's up to you whether you want to pay or not. At most, our Chamber of Commerce will pay for it ourselves. It's not like we can't afford it anyway." Lu Huaishui sneered and said in a strange tone, "But don't blame me for not reminding you. If Xiao Chang comes to collect the debt in 3 days, he won't be able to be dismissed with just a few thousand spiritual crystals. You better think about it carefully. Goodbye." After he finished speaking, Lu Huaishui waved his sleeves and strode out of the door with his 2 bodyguards. "Director Lu, please wait. Please wait." Zhao Shimu's body trembled. He finally realized the seriousness of this problem from Lu Huaishui's words. He couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. He immediately ran over to stop Lu Huaishui, who was about to reach the door. "What else do you want? Don't tell me you want to get back the 5,000 spiritual crystals fine you just paid?" Lu Huaishui stared at Zhao Shimu and mocked him. "Director Lu, my great-grandfather is quite impatient, and his words are also very blunt. Please don't lower yourself to his level, Director Lu." Zhao Shimu did not dare to be angry at all. He said with a smile, "I suddenly remembered that our Zhao family's rental service seemed to be for a year. It's not even a year yet. We can't just let it go, right? You don't have to worry about that. Our Chamber of Commerce will naturally continue to provide services before the end of the year." Director Lu straightened his sleeves and smiled as he stared at Zhao Shimu. His smile was like a spring breeze, as if he wasn't angry at all. That's good, that's good." Zhao Shimu nodded his head continuously. He finally felt relieved. "But I've made it very clear today. Lu Huaishui changed the topic and said slowly, as long as you're willing to give me some more spirit crystals, I'll be able to explain it to my superiors when I get back. Things will naturally be smoother and the speed of sending people over will be faster. We won't have to wait 10 days or half a month to invite the next expert. What do you think? Zhao Shimu's expression changed several times, but he still couldn't make up his mind. Lu Huaishui was not anxious. He stood at the entrance of the Zhao family's house and looked around with interest. After thinking for a moment, Zhao Shimu finally gritted his teeth and nodded. All right. We'll do as you say. However, we have to do things according to the contract this time. You have to send an even more powerful person to our Zhao family. He has to be at least an original soul stage expert. This way, we can ensure that this expert can secretly investigate Xiao Chang's strength and also consolidate the Zhao family's position in Yanlin town. You don't have to worry about that. Lu Huaishui agreed immediately. Our Immortal Cultivation Chamber of Commerce has an extremely outstanding reputation in the industry. As long as it's a matter stipulated in the contract, we will definitely complete it according to the contract. There will definitely be no cases of breaking the contract. Seeing that Lu Huaishui had already said so, Zhao Shimu didn't want to delay any further. He personally ordered 5,000 spiritual crystals and handed them over to Lu Huaishui reluctantly. Although the compensation fee was much higher than expected, Zhao Shimu weighed the pros and cons in his heart. After spending these spiritual crystals, he would be able to earn them back one day. It was much better than being powerless when Xiao Chang came looking for him to settle the debt. He could only watch helplessly as the Zhao family was wiped out by Xiao Chang. Ah, Mr. Zhao is indeed an understanding person. After Lu Huaishui counted the number of spiritual crystals and confirmed that there were no mistakes, he patted Zhao Shimu's shoulder and smiled in satisfaction. When I return, I will first settle the procedures for Guan Weikai. Then I will personally make a trip to the sect he is in. After settling this matter, I will immediately send him over to you. You can rest assured and wait for my good news. Looking at the backs of Lu Huaishui and his group leaving, Zhao Shimu's heart was also in a mess. He had always felt that Lu Huaishui was a strange person. He always used strange terms when he spoke and seemed rather unreliable. However, apart from the Immortal Cultivation Chamber of Commerce, he couldn't find a better backing. He could only hope that the Chamber of Commerce could give him another shot. Actually, Zhao Shimu was thinking too much. Although Lu Huaishui seemed to be sly and unreliable, he really valued the credibility of the Chamber of Commerce. He also didn't want to see the customers in his hands lose. Therefore, after returning to the Lucian Prefecture branch and settling the relevant matters, Lu Huaishui immediately brought his two subordinates and personally went to the secluded forest sect where Guan Weikai was. In the secluded forest sect's guest hall, a middle-aged man dressed in a long blue robe listened to Lu Huaishui's narration of the entire incident with a serious expression. His brows furrowed from time to time. When he heard that the two bodyguards of the Immortal Cultivation Chamber of Commerce had inexplicably attacked each other without knowing what had happened, the middle-aged man's face revealed an extremely astonished expression. It was obvious that he was quite fearful of Xiao Chen's strength. Sect leader Guan, this is the basic situation. Our Chamber of Commerce also expresses its deep regret regarding the death of Senior Guan. After briefly explaining what had happened, Lu Huaishui took out a heavy bag and gently placed it on the table. Then he pushed it towards the middle-aged man. This is. Sect leader Guan glanced at the bag on the table. Although he had a rough idea of what it was, he still asked symbolically. This is the funeral compensation for Senior Guan Weikai. It is a total of 10,000 spiritual crystals. This is also a small token of our Chamber of Commerce. Please take a look. Lu Huaishui sat upright and explained without a change in his expression. Chapter 1361. According to what you said, Xiao Chang should be quite powerful. After knowing that the bag contained spiritual crystals, sect leader Guan did not seem to care too much. He only nodded slightly and asked with a sullen face, "Has your Chamber of Commerce gotten hold of Xiao Chang's information? Which sect is he from, and what is his relationship with the Qin family of Yanlin town?" For a mid-tier sect like the Tranquil Forest sect, although spirit crystals were a very important resource, mid-tier gold core stage experts were even more rare talents. The amount of money and resources needed to cultivate a gold core stage expert had already far exceeded these 10,000 spirit crystals. That was why sect leader Guan was so depressed and wanted to know the background of the murderer. We are still investigating. Lu Huaishui smiled sheepishly and said awkwardly, However, the other party's current attitude is very rude and unreasonable. It may affect the progress of the investigation. So this time, I am here to communicate with the secluded forest sect and see how we should handle this. What do you mean by that? Sect leader Guan raised his eyebrows and looked at Lu Huaishui as he asked, "Isn't it the duty of the Data Immortal Cultivation Chamber of Commerce to investigate the other party's background? Why do you want to communicate with us?" "It's like this," Lu Huaishui explained unhurriedly. "Our Chamber of Commerce is deeply saddened by Senior Guan's passing and can understand the Tranquil Forest sect's eagerness to capture the murderer. Because we do not have many people now, if you hand it over to us to investigate, it may take more time." "You mean, you want the Tranquil Forest sect to assist you in the investigation?" Sect leader Guan's mind was very sharp and he understood Lu Huaishui's intention immediately. If the Tranquil Forest sect is willing to send another expert, that would be the best. Lu Huaishui smiled and nodded. On one hand, he can go to the Zhao family and continue to serve as a priest and receive the remuneration he deserves. On the other hand, he can also assist our people to investigate Xiao Chang's identity and background. "I see." Sect leader Guan rubbed his temples. After thinking for a moment, he slowly opened his mouth and said, "How about this? I will send another Golden Core expert to the Zhao family to continue Guan Waitai's work." Lu Huaishui's expression changed slightly. When he was about to say something, Sect leader Guan's expression suddenly turned serious. He stared at Lu Huaishui and added coldly, "But your people can't stay idle. This time you have to ensure his safety. If anything happens to our master, it won't be as simple as compensating the spiritual crystals." Sect leader Guan, if I may be so bold as to say, I'm afraid an expert at the peak of the gold core stage is not qualified for this job. Lu Huaishui shook his head and said helplessly with a bitter face, "Incompetent? Do you know what you're saying?" Sect Master Guan thought that Lu Huaishui was trying to bargain and ask for a stronger person to be sent out. His face darkened and he felt a little displeased. "To be honest, Sect Leader Guan, one of my 2 bodyguards is a master at the peak of the gold core stage, and the other has reached the realm of half a step to the Yuanying stage." Lu Huaishui's expression was a little bitter. "You mean?" Sect Leader Guan was stunned. His astonished gaze shifted to the 2 people standing behind Lu Huaishui. Although he was unwilling to admit it, Lu Huaishui still sighed and told the truth. Yes, the 2 of them suffered a loss at the hands of that Xiao Chang. "So, I suggest that you send someone more powerful or else." Lu Huaishui did not finish his sentence. Instead, he smiled helplessly and made an expression that said, "You know what I mean." "That's impossible, right? Even an immortal cultivator who is half a step to the Yuanying stage is no match for him." Although Sect Leader Guan had a vague premonition in his heart, he was still very shocked when he heard Lu Huaishui admit it personally. He stared at the 2 bodyguards in a daze. Lu Huaishui did not say much. He directly gestured for the 2 bodyguards behind him to show their cultivation to prove to Sect Leader Guan that what he said was true. Sect Leader Guan frowned. Suddenly he recalled Director Lu's description and made a firm judgment. It seems that the person whom the Qin clan invited is at least an expert at the first level of the Yuanying stage. Your minds must have been controlled by his mental strength. That's why you killed each other. The 2 bodyguards nodded their heads bitterly. After they left the Qin clan, they analyzed the situation and concluded that it should be so. After all, after reaching the Yuanying stage, an immortal cultivator's mental strength would be very strong. Therefore, they would be controlled at the same time and act involuntarily. Sect Leader Guan suddenly stood up and paced back and forth anxiously. His expression was a little grave. According to his understanding, there were not many Yuanying stage experts in the Lucian prefecture. The sects that had such experts were even rarer. Including his own Tranquil Forest sect, there were only 2 of them. The other sect was the Burning Sky faction, which was the sworn enemy of the Tranquil Forest sect in the Lucian prefecture. Could it be that Xiao Chang was one of them? But why would the Burning Sky faction send an Yuanying stage expert to Yanlin town for no reason? This did not make sense. Sect Leader Guan, I have already said what I need to say. Seeing that Sect Leader Guan was deep in thought for a long time, Lu Huaishui's expression did not look good. He said coldly, "If you insist on sending a Golden Core Full Circle disciple to the Zhao clan, then I advise you not to do so. This will damage the reputation of our Chamber of Commerce. Secondly, it will be a wasted sacrifice of a disciple. There is absolutely no need for this. This is a serious matter. I need to consider it carefully." Sect leader Guan still could not figure out the connection between the Yuanying stage expert and the Burning Sky faction. Hearing this, he could only give a vague answer. Alright, then you should consider it carefully. Give me an answer after you have thought it through. I will take my leave first. Seeing that sect leader Guan did not agree after a long time, Lu Huaishui was also a little impatient. He simply stood up, cupped his hands and left the tranquil forest sect with his subordinates. After sending Lu Huaishui off, sect leader Guan did not leave the guest hall. He still sat there deep in thought. It was not that he did not believe in Lu Huaishui's words. It was just that the highest level that the tranquil forest sect could freely dispatch was only a golden core full circle disciple. The cultivation of the others was not even worth mentioning. Even if they were to go, they would only be sending themselves to death as cannon fodder. But if he did not send anyone to the Zhao clan, then not only would he not be able to avenge Guan Wei Kai, if news of this were to spread, the prestige of the sect would definitely be damaged. After all, the Tranquil Forest sect was one of the two main sects in the Lucian prefecture. If his disciple was killed for no reason and he, as the sect leader, turned a blind eye to it, he was afraid that he would not be able to stay in the Lucian prefecture anymore. Chapter 1362. After thinking for a long time, sect leader Guan slapped the handle of the chair heavily, as if he had finally made a decision. He stood up and left the room, walking towards a room on the east side of the sect. Greetings, sect leader. Outside a secret building on the east side of the Tranquil Forest sect, two young disciples were guarding the place, chatting about anything and everything. Just as they were chatting excitedly, one of the disciples saw sect leader Guan walking over slowly with a serious expression. He was instantly shocked and hurriedly bowed to him. Sect leader Guan nodded slightly and did not speak, staring at the door with slight hesitation. The two disciples looked at each other, feeling a little uneasy. They had been chatting too enthusiastically just now. Would they have angered the sect leader? You two, go in and inform Uncle Master Ing that I have something important to discuss with him. Sect leader Guan's hesitation flashed past, and he did not care about the expressions of the two disciples, waved his hand casually and said, But Uncle Master Ing is in seclusion. The two disciples immediately looked awkward, and were thinking about how to refuse when they heard sect leader Guan yell impatiently, Nonsense! Of course I know that he is in seclusion, just go ahead and inform him. If there is any problem I will take responsibility. Yes, we will go now. The two disciples could not help but shiver and did not dare to say anything more. One of them hurriedly turned around and ran into the room, while the other waited outside the door with a nervous smile. Not long after, the disciple who went to inform sect leader Guan ran back. He first panted for a while, then said a little awkwardly, reporting to sect leader, Uncle Mastering asked you to tell us the situation directly, and also said that if it is not too important, do not disturb his cultivation. What the hell, why does it seem like he is not concerned at all? Sect leader Guan muttered gloomily, but did not dare to disobey the order of that Uncle Mastering, so he could only tell the whole story of his disciple Guan Wei Kai losing his life in the Qin family, as well as the cause and effect. Alright, please wait for a moment, sect leader. After listening, the disciple nodded and went back to report. But this time he came back even faster. Standing in front of sect leader Guan, he said in a low voice with a flushed face, Sect leader Marshal Granduncle Ing, he hasn't made any moves. He doesn't seem to be too concerned about this matter. Do you think we should forget it? Let's wait for him to come out of seclusion. Seeing that his uncle master was not interested at all, sect leader Guan had no other choice. He could not be bothered to wait any longer, so he waved his hand and turned to leave. Anyway, even Marshal Uncle didn't care about him, so what was the point of coaxing him? If he had the time, he might as well do something else. Looking at sect leader Guan's back as he left, the two disciples on guard looked at each other. Although they were curious as to how Uncle Guan, who was already at the Golden Core perfection stage, could be killed so easily as low-level disciples, they naturally did not dare to ask too many questions. They could only continue to stand guard at the entrance. Actually, sect leader Guan had misunderstood Uncle Ing, who was in seclusion. It was not that he was indifferent to the disciples of the faction, but he was about to break through to the original infant stage level 3 and was stuck at an important juncture. Hence, he did not pay much attention to these trivial matters. After all, the most important thing now was to successfully break through and increase his cultivation. However, what was strange was that although sect leader Guan had repeatedly given strict orders to not spread the news, there were still people who spread the news of Guan Weicai's death. and the more it spread, the more exaggerated it became. In the end, in the entire Lucian prefecture, as long as you randomly picked someone on the street, they would be able to narrate the story vividly. There were various versions of the story, and every version could be made into a drama. The rumor was so rampant that it eventually reached the ears of the Burning Sky faction, which had a hostile relationship with the Secluded Forest sect. After hearing the news, the Burning Sky faction naturally would not let go of such a great opportunity. They ridiculed the Secluded Forest sect, and even allowed their disciples to provoke the people of the Secluded Forest sect in Lucian prefecture. They mocked them for being cowards who did not even flinch when their own people were killed. Even sect leader Guan did not escape from the ridicule. The people of the Burning Sky faction openly spoke disrespectfully in Lucian prefecture, and directly accused him of being a sect leader who could not protect his disciples. The Secluded Forest sect would definitely fall and disappear under such people. After such a commotion, the reputation of the Secluded Forest sect plummeted. Many disciples were even more dissatisfied and left the faction to find another way out. Sect leader Guan was neither blind nor deaf. Naturally, he had heard of the rumors in the outside world. In the beginning, he had only wanted to catch the originator of the rumors. Then, after a long time, these unsubstantiated rumors would naturally die down. In the end, he did not expect that the spy in the faction would not be caught, and instead, the rumors would spread more and more. Seeing that the number of disciples in the Secluded Forest sect was decreasing, sect leader Guan could not help but fly into a rage. However, he could not do anything to the person who spread the rumors. He could not possibly catch and kill the person who spread the rumors, right? If that was the case, the people in Lucian prefecture would basically be killed. Helplessly, sect leader Guan could only go to the small house where Uncle Master Ing was in seclusion once again. He told Uncle Master Ing about the rumors that were spreading everywhere, as well as the merciless ridicule of the Secluded Forest sect by the Burning Sky faction. He hoped that this time, Uncle Master Ing could come out and take charge of the situation. This time, Uncle Master Ing was really persuaded by sect leader Guan. In addition to the fact that he had successfully broken through to the third level of the original infant stage, he decisively left the place where he was in seclusion. In a rage, he led sect leader Guan and a group of disciples, intending to give the Burning Sky faction a show of strength. Although a group of people went to the Burning Sky faction in a mighty manner, Uncle Master Ing did not really expect to destroy the faction. The Burning Sky faction and the Secluded Forest sect were both the top factions in Lucian prefecture. Their strengths were not too different. Even if there was a large-scale conflict, neither side would be at a great disadvantage. Therefore, the purpose of Uncle Master Ing this time was to put on a show, to tell the whole Lucian prefecture that the Secluded Forest sect had not declined, and was still one of the leading factions. Those disturbing rumors were fabricated by the people of the Burning Sky faction, and should not be believed easily. Naturally, the Burning Sky faction was well aware of this matter. Therefore, when the people from the Secluded Forest sect came to denounce them, both sides exchanged a few insults and sent out a few disciples to fight. After both sides had a winner and a loser, the matter ended abruptly. Although the purpose of this trip had been achieved, Uncle Master Ing was not willing to let his faction suffer such a huge loss for no reason. Therefore, he shouted loudly outside the door of the Burning Sky faction, saying that he wanted to first go to the Qing clan of Yanlin town to kill the murderer Xiao Chang, and then come back to settle the score with the people of the Burning Sky faction who spread the rumors. After finishing his words, Uncle Master Ing left angrily with a group of people. Chapter 1363. Not long after the people from the Tranquil Forest sect left, a black figure quietly appeared at the back door of the Burning Sky faction. That person vigilantly observed the surroundings for a while, and after making sure there were no strangers nearby, he tiptoed out, and then used his movement skills to quickly run in the direction of Yanlin town. In the Qin family mansion, Qin Shengling was chatting with Xiao Chen and Hong Zhu when a servant suddenly ran in, still looking a little flustered. What's going on? Could it be that someone from the Zhao family has come to provoke us again? Qin Shengling was all too familiar with the servant's appearance, and immediately frowned and asked, No. The servant shook his head and reported respectfully, reporting to Master, there is a man dressed in black from Lucian prefecture outside the door who has come to visit. He claims to be the managing elder of the Burning Sky faction, and also showed his identity token, saying that he has important matters to discuss with Master, so I hurriedly came in to report. The managing elder of the Burning Sky faction? Qin Shengling was slightly startled when he heard this, and suddenly came to a realization. He suddenly stood up and said, "Could it be that Elder Gong has come? Quickly invite him in. That's right, while you're at it, ask someone to prepare some top-notch snacks, and then brew a pot of top-notch Longjing tea. Remember to use 70% hot water." Qin Shengling first sent the servant to invite Elder Gong, and then hurriedly ordered the other servants to prepare various things. It seemed that he wanted to receive the visitor with the grandest etiquette of the Qin family, and absolutely could not be neglected. Seeing Qin Shengling's nervous look, Xiao Chen felt that it was very interesting and asked with a slight smile, "Old Patriarch Qin, I didn't expect that you would prepare such a grand welcoming ceremony for just one person. It seems that this managing elder is an old friend of yours?" It can't be considered an old friend. This old man just had the fate to meet this managing elder once. Qin Shengling touched his nose and answered a little embarrassedly. Qin Shengling thought that Xiao Chen was jealous. After all, when Xiao Chen was invited to the Qin family by Qin Taotian, he did not give him such treatment, and instead gave him the cold shoulder, so he felt a little awkward at this time. Since it's not a firm friendship, then it seems that the Burning Sky faction has a very strong background? Xiao Chen didn't care about Qin Shengling's thoughts, but continued to ask with interest. Qin Shengling explained with a smile, "Exalted deity Xiao, you may not know this, but the Burning Sky faction is one of the two major factions in Luxian Prefecture. The other one is the Tranquil Forest sect. The power of these two factions basically covers the entire Luxian Prefecture. No other faction can compete with them. So that's how it is. I wonder how strong these two sects are." Xiao Chen nodded and asked curiously, "Burning Sky faction or Tranquil Forest sect, which one is stronger?" Although he had been in the immortal cultivation world for quite some time, Xiao Chen was still not very clear about the distribution of power in Luxian Prefecture. Since he had the opportunity, he wanted to understand more about it. "I heard that the strength of these two sects is about the same. Both are quite powerful, which is why they each occupy half of the sect. Neither sect can destroy the other." Qin Shengling rubbed his chin and answered hesitantly, "Then are there any powerful experts in their sects? What level are they?" Xiao Chen was still not satisfied and continued to ask. "I don't know about that." Qin Shengling's face fell. He grinned helplessly and said gloomily, "With the Qin clan's current strength, it is not enough to reach that level." Xiao Chen was a little disappointed. Just as he was about to continue speaking, he saw a servant leading a middle-aged man from outside the door. The middle-aged man walked to the center of the hall and stood firmly. He first swept his gaze over everyone present. His gaze lingered on Xiao Chen and Hong Zhu for a while. Then he bowed slightly to Qin Shengling and said in a clear voice, "Clan Master Qin, I am Gong Xiaoxi, the acting elder of the Burning Sky faction. It is our first time meeting. Nice to meet you. Elder Gong, please don't be so polite." Qin Shengling waved his hands and walked in front of Gong Xiaoxi. He said very eagerly, "It is our great honor to have an elder of such a big faction like you visit our Qin clan as a guest. This Qin is deeply honored. Come, please take a seat." Qin Shengling made an inviting gesture to Gong Xiaoxi and led both Xiao Chen and Gong Xiaoxi to the seat of honor. He then stood respectfully to the side and quietly waited for instructions. He was still a little nervous in his heart. He did not know why Gong Xiaoxi had suddenly come to visit. Clan Master Qin, there is no need to be so restrained. You should also sit down and chat." Gong Xiaoxi looked at Xiao Chen with some surprise and then said to Qin Shengling with a smile. Qin Shengling smiled embarrassedly and found a guest seat to sit down. He only dared to sit on half of the seat and looked very serious and nervous. Seeing that Qin Shengling was very respectful towards Xiao Chen, Gong Xiaoxi guessed that this young man in front of him had a very prominent identity. Therefore he maintained his smile and asked politely, "This young hero must be the Qin clan's Honorable Xiao Chang, right? You are indeed a promising young man to be able to make the old ghost of the secluded forest sect go to war for you. May I ask, which sect are you a proud disciple of?" "You know my name?" Xiao Chen was slightly taken aback. He did not expect that the first thing Gong Xiaoxi asked after his polite greetings was actually about his situation. He could not help but look at him with extreme vigilance. Although Xiao Chen did not feel that this fellow had any hostility towards him, he had always been cooped up in Yanlin town. There should not be many people who knew his name. Where did Gong Xiaoxi hear it from? And who was that old ghost of the secluded forest sect? Why did he go to war for him? Haha, young hero need not be nervous. Do you still remember that old man Guan Weikai who was killed by you? He is the Zhao clan's honorable disciple. He is a disciple of the secluded forest sect. Gong Shaoxi waved his hand and signaled for Xiao Chen to be at ease before explaining. Then you are. The doubt in Xiao Chen's heart did not diminish. A disciple of the secluded forest sect was killed by him. Shouldn't the secluded forest sect come to find trouble with him? Why did the people from the Burning Sky sect come here? Actually, the whole thing is like this. Gong Shaoxi did not keep him in suspense. With a smile on his face, he briefly described the relationship between the Burning Sky sect and the secluded forest sect. Then he recounted how the secluded forest sect brought people to provoke the Burning Sky sect. So that's how it is. I was still puzzled. Xiaochang, my husband, you did not advertise, nor did you leave Yanlin town. How did your reputation spread so quickly? It gave me a big fright. Hong Zhu, who was sitting on the other side, came to a sudden realization after listening. He curled his lips and said, I thought that there would be many women coming to snatch my husband from me very soon. Scared this baby to death. Chapter 1364. At first, Hong Zhu thought that Gong Shaoxi was here to cause trouble, but after listening to him, he realized that it was not the case. He did not expect that Xiao Chen would attract the Burning Sky faction's managing elder just because he killed a secluded forest sect's consecrator. Xiao Chen shrugged his shoulders indifferently. According to Gong Shaoxi, the strongest person in the secluded forest sect should be a nascent soul stage expert. Even if he came to the Qin family, he would not be able to cause any trouble. It was not enough to make him feel fear. Young hero Xiao, I have explained everything clearly. Now let me tell you the purpose of my visit. Gong Shaoxi's expression turned serious and he said cautiously, the people of the secluded forest sect are narrow-minded and always seek revenge for the smallest grievance. Since that nascent soul stage old man said so, he will definitely come to the Qin family to settle the score with you. Oh, and then? Xiao Chen leaned lazily on the chair and asked casually. Then. Gong Shaoxi did not expect Xiao Chen's attitude. After being stunned for a while, he continued, I advise you to prepare yourself. If you really can't handle it, run away immediately. Or hide in the Burning Sky faction. That way he will not be able to do anything to you. Actually, the purpose of Gong Shaoxi's visit to the Qin clan this time was to remind Xiao Chen to prepare to escape. However, he did not do it for Xiao Chen's own good. He wanted to save Xiao Chen's life. He mainly wanted to see the secluded forest sect become a joke, so that the old man with the surname Ing would run away empty-handed. This way the Burning Sky faction could mercilessly mock them again. If that's the case, then I thank you for your kindness. Xiao Chen first thanked him indifferently. Then he raised his eyebrows and said casually, but that old man is only a nascent soul stage cultivator. What is there to be afraid of? If he wants to come, he can come. I have no interest in running away. Moreover, if he comes and can't find me, he will still take it out on the Qin family. I might as well wait for him at the Qin family. That's right. What did you say? Gong Shaoxi thought that Xiao Chen had agreed. When he heard the second half of Xiao Chen's words, his face suddenly changed. He said unhappily, why don't you appreciate it? If you're worried that the old man will make things difficult for the Qin family, I naturally have a way to protect them. Moreover, his main target is you, so what's the point of staying in the Qin family? Gong Shaoxi thought to himself, this Xiao Chang looks so young, but why is he so stubborn? Even if you had the ability to kill a golden core stage expert, how could you fight against a nascent soul stage expert? Furthermore, he had been in the nascent soul stage for a very long time. Who knew what stage he had reached by now? Don't you know when you're trying to be brave? Of course it's interesting. Xiao Chen crossed his legs and said leisurely, I'm just waiting for that old fart to come and die. I'll kill one or two anyway. If the people from the Tranquil Forest sect really dare to cause trouble at the Qin clan, I'll make sure that all of them stay here and not a single one of them can go back. Although he had rejected Gong Shaoxi's suggestion, Xiao Chen did not have the intention to blame this fellow. After all, he had come to warn him out of goodwill. It was just that he did not understand Xiao Chen's strength. That's right. My husband Xiao Chang is very powerful. He'll definitely beat up those people from the Tranquil Forest sect. I guarantee that he'll definitely beat them up. Hong Zhu also waved his small fists at the side, eager to give it a try. Gong Shaoxi frowned and thought to himself, why is this person so stubborn? Did he really have to explain everything to her first? If you don't leave, how am I going to laugh at the people from the Tranquil Forest sect? Once he thought of this, Gong Shaoxi's tone became somewhat unyielding. He ordered coldly, no, you must leave immediately. Before I came here, I've already told the disciples of the Burning Sky sect that you only need to hide in our Burning Sky sect for a few days and come back after the storm has passed. Husband Xiaoqin, is there something wrong with this person's brain? Why must we go to his sect to take refuge? Hongzhu tilted her head, blinked her eyes and asked in confusion. I also feel that this person's attitude is a little abnormal. Xiaoqin pinched his chin and nodded in deep thought. He can't have any ulterior motives, right? Is he after money or sex? You've really scared this sister to death. Hongzhu immediately tucked the lapels in front of her chest and put on a stern and inviolable appearance. Although Xiaoqin did not know whether to laugh or cry at Hongzhu's actions, he did not have the time to scold her. Instead, he looked at Gong Xiaoxi with a strange expression and said, could it be that the Burning Sky sect and the Tranquil Forest sect have colluded with each other to deceive us and then set up an ambush on the way? How can there be so many kind-hearted people in this day and age? They clearly know that someone wants to deal with me, yet they actually ran over to inform me. Why do I not believe them? When Gong Xiaoxi heard this, he immediately trembled in anger. Even his face darkened. He slammed the armrest of his chair heavily, pointed at Xiaoqin and shouted angrily, "You? I'm so angry I came to warn you out of goodwill, but I didn't think that not only would you not appreciate it, you would actually suspect and frame us. How could the Burning Sky sect use such a despicable method to deceive people? It's up to you whether you believe it or not, it's fine if you don't believe it. Immortal Xiao, I also think that you must have misunderstood Elder Gong." Seeing that the two sides were showing signs of breaking down, Qin Shengling hurriedly jumped out to smooth things over and said, the Burning Sky sect's reputation in Luxian Prefecture is not bad. It is absolutely impossible for them to do such a harmful thing. Why don't you do as Elder Gong said and go to the Burning Sky sect to lie low for a while? Although our Qin family strength is not good, it should not be a problem for us to deal with them. Qin Shengling was a little flustered. It was not good to offend either side, so he could only try his best to mediate and hope that these two people would not quarrel. There's really no need for that. Xiaoqin shook his head and said with an indifferent expression, I don't really suspect the Burning Sky sect. I'm just curious, why does he want me to leave? After all, this matter actually has nothing to do with the Burning Sky sect at all. Why did he suddenly come to get involved in this mess? What's his intention? Xiaoqin was indeed a little puzzled. He knew that Qin Shengling had good intentions, but the Burning Sky sect did not have a strong relationship with the Qin family in the past. Furthermore, he had only just arrived here, so why would Gong Xiaoxi suddenly come over and ask him to leave the Qin family? Xiaoqin would not believe that there was no ulterior motive behind this at all. Forget it, forget it. Since you're so stubborn, I might as well tell you the truth. Seeing that he was unable to convince Xiaoqin to leave no matter what, Gong Xiaoxi could only wave his hand in a slightly impatient manner. Xiaoqin and Hongzhu both had an as expected expression on their faces. Qin Shengling on the other hand was stunned. Just now, he had really thought that Elder Gong had come over with good intentions to give the Qin family some pointers. Chapter 1365. But Qin Shengling thought it made sense. In the past, the Burning Sky sect wouldn't even look at a small family in Yanlin town. Why would they suddenly show up and offer help without asking for anything in return? Seeing that everyone was waiting for his answer, Gong Xiaoxi impatiently explained, Our Burning Sky sect wanted to see the Tranquil Forest sect make a fool out of themselves, that's why we let you escape. After they came here to show off, they realized that they couldn't find you. Naturally, they would lose face. At that time, I can humiliate them. What? Is that simple? You just wanted to embarrass the Tranquil Forest sect and came all the way here to force me and Xiao Chang's husband to escape. This is too childish. Hongzhu blurted out in shock. Hongzhu felt that these people from the Burning Sky sect weren't idiots, right? Just to mess with someone they actually came all the way here to report. That's ridiculous. The grudge between our two sects has been going on for a long time. It's hard to explain it to you in a short time. Gong Xiaoxi was a little embarrassed. He snorted and looked at Xiaoqin. If you want to stay, then stay. Anyway, your life or death has nothing to do with me. Looking at Gong Xiaoxi's awkward but stubborn look, Xiaoqin didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Could it be that all the sects in the immortal cultivation world were so frivolous that they found pleasure in watching their enemies make a fool of themselves? It's not like they were playing house. Xiaoqin rolled his eyes and said unhurriedly, Don't you just want to see that nascent soul old man suffer a loss? I can show you something even more fun. I guarantee that the effect is not any worse than your rotten idea. How about it? Do you want to give it a try? What's more fun? Gong Xiaoxi was stunned. Looking at Xiao Chen's confident look, he couldn't help but warn him with a face full of suspicion. Young man, don't think that you're amazing just because you killed a golden core stage level 6. With your current strength, if you want to mess with the Tranquil Forest sect, you're basically playing with fire. Oh, I just want you to see how I'm going to kill that old ghost. Xiao Chen stretched his body and the corners of his mouth curled up slightly as he casually said. Xiao Chen really wanted to meet some experts of the same level as him. He could also increase his knowledge of the immortal cultivation world. Nascent soul stage fellows were simply not worthy of his attention. Stop bragging. Do you think that just because the Qin family's patriarch keeps calling you an exalted immortal, you are really an immortal? Gong Xiaoxi didn't expect Xiao Chen to be so arrogant. He couldn't help but shake his head and reprimand him in disdain. Xiao Chen curled his lips and casually said, "Isn't he just a nascent soul expert? If you want to come, come." Even a dozen of them wouldn't be enough for this exalted immortal to deal with. Moreover, he's only one person. Isn't that just asking for a beating? Gong Xiaoxi was extremely speechless towards Xiao Chen's arrogance. He could only helplessly pat his shoulder and earnestly said, "Young man, I advise you to be more down to earth. As the saying goes, if you don't have a diamond, don't do porcelain work. Now that you're bragging to the heavens, when the time comes, you will definitely die a horrible death. Why don't you believe me?" Xiao Chen lightly pushed away Gong Xiaoxi's palm on his shoulder and lightly smiled. "How about this? I see that you have some strength. As long as you can defeat me, then I will listen to you and leave the Qin clan to seek refuge in your Burning Heavens faction. If you can't defeat me, then you have to agree to one of my conditions. What do you think?" "Yo, I didn't think that you would talk big at such a young age." Gong Xiaoxi looked at Xiao Chen with a surprised expression. Did this brat really think that he was invincible? He actually dared to challenge him. "How about it? Do you dare to accept? If you don't dare, then forget it. You can go back by yourself." Xiao Chen laughed as he looked at Gong Xiaoxi. Gong Xiaoxi pondered for a moment. He felt that even though he hadn't reached the nascent soul stage, he was still a half-step nascent soul stage cultivator. There was no reason for him to be unable to defeat this inexperienced young man in front of him. He heavily slammed the table and said, "Fine, I accept your challenge. Why don't you ask me what my condition is?" Xiao Chen laughed and joked, "What if I mention something like accepting the Burning Heavens faction or asking you to run naked on the streets? What would you do?" "I will only agree to your condition if you win, and that is impossible." Gong Xiaoxi very confidently waved his hand. He thought for a moment and said, "But if I don't let you mention your condition, I think you definitely won't be satisfied." "Then say it. What condition is it? If it's really an unreasonable condition, then let's not fight. You're just trying to be funny on purpose." "Actually, it's very simple. If I win, your Burning Heavens faction must send someone to the Qin clan to serve as a guest. If the Qin clan is in danger, you must help unconditionally. It's equivalent to you being the Qin clan's backer." Xiao Chen said indifferently. Xiao Chen felt that ever since he came to Yanlin town, the Qin clan had been quite good to him. They did their best to do things. Therefore, he planned to make some benefits for the Qin clan while he was still here. After a period of time, when he left, they would have enough ability to protect themselves and prevent others from taking advantage of their weakness. After Qin Shengling heard this, he was stunned on the spot. Exalted Immortal Xiao was too daring, wasn't he? One must know that the Burning Heavens faction was an extremely high and mighty existence. How could they lower themselves and send someone to serve as a guest at the Qin clan? Moreover, with the Qin clan's current financial situation, not to mention hiring a Burning Heavens faction disciple, they probably couldn't even afford to hire Xiao Chang. Don't. Just as Qin Shengling was about to open his mouth to reject this condition, he was interrupted by Gong Xiaoxi. "All right, I'll agree to this condition of yours. Then when do we start the competition?" He didn't think as much as Qin Shengling. This Xiao Chang was at most a golden core perfection stage cultivator. Asking him to raise conditions was just for fun. Therefore, after listening to Xiao Chang, he nodded his head and agreed without thinking. "Let's do it now." Xiao Chen stood up and looked around. "This place is too small. Let's go out and compete. Otherwise, if we break the tables and chairs, I'll have to ask you to pay for it with spirit crystals. That would be so embarrassing." Although he said this, Xiao Chen's expression was still very calm. He gestured to Gong Xiaoxi, then led the way to the garden outside. Gong Xiaoxi shook his head. He didn't take Xiao Chen's arrogant words to heart and followed him out of the guest hall. Qin Shengling and Hongzhu also followed from a distance. One was anxious and fearful, while the other was excited as if he was watching a show. The two of them arrived at an empty space in the Qin clan's garden. Xiaochen was afraid that they would accidentally injure the Qin clan servants, so he asked Qin Shengling to send away all the unrelated people. Then he got into position and hooked his finger, indicating that Gong Xiaoxi could make his move. Chapter 1366. Are you ready? Why don't you take out your magic tool? Gong Xiaoxi waited for a while and saw that Xiaochen was still standing not far away with his bare hands. He couldn't help but ask with a puzzled face. Oh, my magic tool's destructive power is too strong. If I take it out, it's very likely that you'll be killed instantly. If you die, who am I going to look for to fulfill the bet? Xiaochen rolled his eyes and made up a random excuse. That's why I'm choosing not to use the artifact. Actually, how could Xiaochen have any magic tool on him? If he had to say, he could only use his flying sword. However, this Gong Xiaoxi didn't seem to have much strength. Xiaochen reckoned that he wouldn't need to take out his flying sword. Maybe he wouldn't even need to use his vitality to win easily. Gong Xiaoxi thought about it and felt that what Xiaochen said made sense. He was also afraid that his strength was too high. If he took out his magic tool and accidentally killed Xiaochen, then it would be very troublesome. Thinking up to this point, Gong Xiaoxi nodded and said, since it's like this, I naturally can't take advantage of you. Then let's not use our magic tools. Otherwise, people will say that I'm bullying the weak and have an unfair advantage in the future. Oh, then you'd better take advantage of me. Xiaochen grinned and said with a smile, anyway, there are no outsiders around. This matter definitely won't be spread out. Also, I really want to see the true strength of your Burning Sky faction. Just now, Xiaochen suddenly had an idea. He wanted to research a special magic tool that could be used with the Heaven's Stolen Fortune battle art. However, he didn't know where to start. Now that he had this opportunity, he wanted to see a few other people's magic tools and then try to make one himself. No way, no way. As the managing elder of the Burning Sky faction, how can I casually make a move on a defenseless cultivator? Gong Xiaoxi waved his hand repeatedly. Set after set of principles flowed out like a torrential river. This is completely against our faction's rules. If you're afraid, then take out your magic tool. I won't laugh at you. You're too slow. Xiaochen felt that Gong Xiaoxi was like Xuanzang who was chanting scriptures. He couldn't help but frown. He couldn't be bothered to listen to Gong Xiaoxi's nonsense. He moved and rushed forward a few steps. He raised his hand and slapped Gong Xiaoxi. Fuck you, our Burning Heaven sect. Holy shit. Oh. Gong Xiaoxi was still talking eloquently, but before he could finish his sentence, he felt a strong force coming at him. Before Gong Xiaoxi could react, he was sent flying by Xiaochen's slap and landed heavily on the grass not far away. Qin Shengling, who was standing at the side, was dumbfounded. He had thought that with the strength of a top expert like Gong Xiaoxi, he would at least be able to fight to a draw with exalted immortal Xiao. In the end, Gong Xiaoxi had sent him flying with just a casual slap. An exalted immortal is indeed an exalted immortal. Truly extraordinary. Xiao Chang's husband is the best. Xiao Chang hubby is the best. Hongzhu was so excited that he was like a little fan. His cheeks were red as he shouted. He was just short of raising a bouquet to cheer for Xiao Chang. Gong Xiaoxi lay on the ground for a while before he covered his red cheeks and stood up. Just as he stood up, he felt like he was seeing stars. He shook his head with all his might. After clearing his head a little, he angrily said, "You're too despicable. You actually launched a sneak attack when I wasn't paying attention. This round can't be counted." Then what do you want? Xiaochen rubbed his nose in boredom. If you didn't talk so much, would I have taken the initiative to attack first? By the time you finished speaking, the sky would have turned dark. Let's compete again. But let me say this first. You can't slap my face. Gong Xiaoxi demanded confidently. How about this? I'll stand still and let you launch a sneak attack as compensation. The corners of Xiaochen's mouth curled up into a strange arc. He nonchalantly raised his chin and said indifferently, "Since you're so confident, then I won't be polite." Gong Xiaoxi did not refuse this time and shouted in a deep voice. As his voice fell, Gong Xiaoxi's pupils suddenly shrank. His left foot stomped heavily on the ground, flipping over the grass that was the size of a palm. His entire body was like a cheetah as he pounced towards Xiaochen. If a bystander were to observe carefully, they would discover that Gong Xiaoxi's right palm was gradually covered with a faint layer of yuan qi. Soon after, a gust of wind condensed from his palm and slapped towards Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen crossed his arms and stood motionless in his original spot. He leisurely watched as Gong Xiaoxi got closer and closer. Gong Xiaoxi thought that Xiao Chen could not react in time and had slightly retracted some of his yuan qi when he attacked, afraid that he would accidentally kill him. But just as Gong Xiaoxi's palm was about to land on Xiao Chen's chest, something unexpected happened. He saw that Xiao Chen, who was just in front of him, suddenly turned into a shadow and disappeared without a trace. Gong Xiaoxi turned pale with fright. He hurriedly looked around but found that his surroundings were empty. He could not see Xiao Chen's figure at all. "There's no need to look. I'm behind you." Just as Gong Xiaoxi was feeling very puzzled and kept searching for traces of Xiao Chen, a familiar voice suddenly came from behind him. What followed was a swift sound of wind breaking. Gong Xiaoxi had just wanted to turn around to defend when he was sent flying by Xiao Chen's kick. "Ah!" Gong Xiaoxi couldn't help but let out a blood-curdling scream. His body drew a completely ungraceful parabola, and with a thud, he fiercely fell on the grass. Lying on the grass in a daze, Gong Xiaoxi felt that something was wrong. There was a faint chill in his heart. As the managing elder of the Burning Heavens faction, his strength could be considered to be above average in the sect. Although he had not reached the nascent soul stage, he had already been at the golden core stage for a long time and was infinitely close to the barrier of the nascent soul stage. In the Burning Heavens faction, other than Gong Xiaoxi's father and another great elder, no one else was able to contend against him. In the end, what Gong Xiaoxi did not expect was that he could not even withstand one move from Xiao Chen. Not to mention withstanding one move, he did not even have the time to see Xiao Chen's movements clearly before he was beaten to a pulp. This couldn't help but make Gong Xiaoxi feel incomparably shocked. But then again, Gong Xiaoxi also felt that he had lost a little bit. Previously, he should not have been too conservative and insisted on fighting with others with his fists and feet or magic tools. After all, when he fought with others in the past, he always used magic tools to compete. Fists and feet were not his strong suit at all. If he had known that this brat had some skills, he would not have said those useless words. He would have directly taken out his magic tool and maybe he would have had a chance of winning. Chapter 1367. "Hey, do you still want to fight?" Xiao Chen strode over and looked down at Gong Xiaoxi, who was lying on the grass. He yawned out of boredom and said, "If you don't want to fight, then quickly admit defeat. Anyway, the bet isn't big. Later you can just ask the Burning Sky sect to pick a gold core stage expert and send him over. The Qin clan will naturally pay the spirit crystals and will definitely not treat you unfairly. Of course I have to continue fighting. I was only warming up just now. I haven't even used my real skills yet. How can I admit defeat like this? Don't bluff." Gong Xiaoxi gritted his teeth and stood up, saying hatefully, "Then hurry up." Xiao Chen looked at the sky and said helplessly, "If you don't fight now, we can go back to eat soon." Gong Xiaoxi's face was a little ugly. He directly took out a scarlet bead from his chest and raised it high in his hand. He immediately activated his mental cultivation method and said with a solemn face, "Since you are unwilling to take out your artifact no matter what, then I won't be polite." Although the bead in his hand looked ordinary, it was very powerful on the inside. It was a treasure passed down from the Burning Sky sect since ancient times, and it was also Gong Xiaoxi's special artifact. This bead was called the Scarlet Flame Bead. Not only could it strengthen the fire attribute martial skills of the wielder, it could also allow the wielder to resist a certain amount of fire damage. It was just that the effect wasn't that obvious. "I am doing this to show my true strength, not to bully you. Don't." Gong Xiaoxi was still chattering there. Xiao Chen, on the other hand, was interested in the artifact that Gong Xiaoxi took out with great difficulty. He took 2 steps forward and snatched the scarlet bead, carefully examining it. According to Xiao Chen's observation, there were some vague strange patterns on the bead. In the middle of the bead, there was a cluster of flames that constantly jumped. When held in his hand, it would emit a slight burning sensation. He could feel a trace of vitality fluctuation, but it wasn't too obvious and there was nothing special about it. After looking at it for a while, Xiao Chen couldn't figure out anything. He held the scarlet flame bead in his hand and said, "Is this thing your artifact? It looks quite ordinary and doesn't give off a feeling of greatness at all. Do you have any other magic tools? Take it out for me to see." Gong Xiaoxi looked at his empty hands and couldn't help but stare blankly for a moment before reacting. This was because a normal cultivator wouldn't try to snatch the other party's magic tool before understanding its usage. He couldn't help but shout in exasperation, "You! How can you snatch my scarlet flame bead so casually? Give it back to me." While shouting, Gong Xiaoxi rushed over, trying to snatch his Dharma artifact back from Xiaoqian. Seeing this, Xiaoqian casually tossed the scarlet bead into the air. Then he tilted his body slightly and easily dodged Gong Xiaoxi's pounce. Then he caught the slowly falling bead and said with a smile, "So this thing is called the scarlet flame bead. Don't be so stingy. I'm just lending it to you for research. I won't do anything to it. Who knows, it might be beneficial to you after I figure something out." "Only a ghost would believe what you said." Gong Xiaoxi staggered and almost fell again. After standing firmly with great difficulty, he glared at Xiaoqian and said angrily, "If you don't want to give it to me, then don't give it to me. Even if you don't want to give it to me, I still have a way to get my scarlet flame bead back." As soon as he finished speaking, Gong Xiaoxi clenched his hands tightly and released his mental strength to control his own magic tool. His mouth was chanting an incantation in an attempt to make the scarlet flame bead return to his hands. Feeling a faint aura covering the scarlet flame bead, Xiaoqian looked at Gong Xiaoxi's posture with great interest. Then he casually flicked his fingers and released his mental strength at the same time. However, the result was obvious. Xiaoqian's mental strength was several times stronger than Gong Xiaoxi's. That power wrapped the entire scarlet flame bead and instantly cut off the connection between Gong Xiaoxi and the scarlet flame bead. How is this possible? Gong Xiaoxi realized that the scarlet flame bead was actually not moving in Xiaoqian's hands, and the mental strength that he released was directly swallowed by another more ferocious mental strength. Gong Xiaoxi's expression at this time was already shocked to the limit. His mouth was wide open and he was completely dumbfounded. He only said a word after a long time. Although he couldn't see Xiaoqian's true level, that ferocious mental strength had already explained everything. Gong Xiaoxi only realized at this time how powerful the seemingly harmless young man in front of him was. He actually struggled for a long time over whether or not to use magic tools. He didn't expect that the other party didn't care what you used. Even if you used 3 to 5 magic tools, the other party would still take care of you. Alright, don't be so surprised. I have no interest in this broken thing. Xiaoqian shrugged his shoulders. He thought that Gong Xiaoxi was feeling distressed about his scarlet flame bead. He didn't have much interest in this kind of low-grade magic tool, so he casually threw the scarlet flame bead into the pocket of Gong Xiaoxi's shirt. Gong Xiaoxi could feel his pocket sink, and then a weak burning sensation came through his clothes. This meant that the scarlet flame bead had returned to his body. However, Gong Xiaoxi, who should have been happy, didn't have any reaction at this moment. He still looked at Xiaoqian with a face full of shock. He couldn't come back to his senses at all. A sentence kept circling in his heart, "I've met a great immortal." Seeing Gong Xiaoxi's expression, Xiaoqian could roughly guess what was going on. He put his hands behind his back and said with a smile, "Since you already know my strength, you should be able to admit defeat now, right?" "Wow. Husband Xiaoqiang is really amazing. You won so easily. I really didn't make a mistake. Hubby is the best." Hong Zhu cheered with a face full of joy. Her proud look made it seem as if she had won this competition. Young hero Xiao. No, exalted immortal. Exalted immortal Xiao, I admit defeat. You really didn't lie to me. To have such a cultivation at such a young age, you are indeed extraordinary. Gong Xiaoxi nodded his head in admiration. He cupped his fists and bowed to Xiaoqian. Then, Xiaoqian was about to mention the bet, but Gong Xiaoxi already knew what he was going to say. He immediately waved his hand and said with emotion, "Don't worry. I, Gong Xiaoxi, am not someone who can't afford to lose. I will definitely not renege on the conditions that I have to fulfill. In the future, I will stay in the Qin family as a consecrator. Furthermore, all the resources and disciples of the Burning Heavens sect can be used by you as you please." Gong Xiaoxi's initial disdain towards Xiaoqian turned to caution, and then to admiration. Although he couldn't see through Xiaoqian's level, based on his intuition, he should have already reached the nascent soul paragon stage. Chapter 1368. Although Lucian Prefecture was vast and had a large number of immortal cultivators, most of them were Qi refinement stage and foundation building stage beginner immortal cultivators. As long as someone reached the gold core stage, that person would have a considerable right to speak in his own family and even in the town. If he cultivated to the 5th or 6th level of the gold core stage, then no matter who saw him, they would be respectful to him, and he would become a fragrant cake that all the major forces would fight over. Even in the Tranquil Forest sect and the Burning Sky faction, cultivators at the later stages of the Golden Core stage were rare. Most of them would take up certain positions such as deacon elders or masters who would guide beginner disciples. As for nascent soul stage cultivators, they were even more rare. Even if all the cultivators from the Secluded Forest sect and the Burning Sky faction were gathered together, including those masters and grandmasters who were in seclusion, there might not be more than 10 of them who had reached the nascent soul stage. Moreover, among these 10 people, most of them had just entered the original infant stage. At most, they were at the 3rd or 4th level of the original infant stage. For example, Gong Xiaoxi had been stuck at the Golden Core full circle for so long and was unable to break through. It was clear how difficult it was to break through from the Golden Core stage to the original infant stage. That was why Gong Xiaoxi was so respectful to Xiao Qin. In his eyes, original infant stage cultivators were people he had never seen or heard of before. For such a great deity who was above the clouds, he would even be willing to call Xiao Qin a deity who had descended from the heavens, not to mention a deity. Ah, you came to the Qin clan to be a consecrator? Xiao Qin looked at Gong Xiaoxi with surprise and waved his hand, saying, "Forget it. You look like a small leader of the Burning Sky faction. I reckon that as a consecrator, you will need to spend a lot of spiritual crystals. The Qin clan is not a particularly big clan now, so I reckon that they will not be able to afford it for now. You can just send a Golden Core stage cultivator who earns 1 spiritual crystal a year over here." Although Xiao Qin knew that if Gong Xiaoxi were to be a consecrator of the Qin family, then this amount would be enough for the Qin family to become the dragon head of Yanlin town in one leap, he also understood the Qin family's present situation. Although he had caused trouble for the Zhao clan several times, causing the Qin clan's business to become more prosperous than before, it was still a bit difficult to hire a half-step nascent soul stage expert all of a sudden. Furthermore, the reason why he made this bet with Gong Xiaoxi was because he couldn't stay in the Qin clan for a long period of time. Therefore, he thought that he should at least help the Qin clan rope in some experts from the Burning Sky faction to hold the fort. Only then would he be able to leave with peace of mind. After all, Qin Shengling had helped him out quite a bit. He had to repay this kindness. If he were to pull a half-step nascent soul cultivator over to the Qin clan and cause them to go bankrupt, that would be repaying kindness with enmity. Don't. Immortal Xiao, you're treating me like an outsider. Gong Xiaoxi immediately shook his head. Then, with a face full of righteousness, he added, "No matter how valuable the spirit crystals are, they are only worldly possessions. As long as I can be an assistant to Immortal Xiao, I don't mind even if you don't give me the spirit crystals." Gong Xiaoxi wasn't an idiot. After being a deacon elder for so many years, he had some ideas of his own when it came to judging a matter. Being able to curry favor with Immortal Xiao was, of course, much better than taking a few spirit crystals. Between the two, he naturally knew how to weigh the pros and cons. How can that be? Qin Shengling, who was standing at the side, exclaimed. Seeing that both Xiao Chen and Gong Xiaoxi had turned their gazes over, Qin Shengling hesitated for a moment and said carefully, "Elder Gong, you're the deacon elder of the Burning Sky faction. How can I let you work here for free? How about this? I'll give you a portion of the spirit crystals as a down payment. After a while, when the Qin clan's business improves, I'll pay the rest. What do you think?" From Qin Shengling's point of view, to be able to invite an elder of the Burning Sky faction to be a consecrator was something that many clans could only dream of. He didn't expect that today, with just one sentence from Xiao Qin, he could actually make this originally impossible wish come true. It was simply too incredible. Qin Shengling still felt like he was in a dream. He couldn't believe that everything that had happened was real. "Old Master Qin, you don't have to say anything more. Since I've already made up my mind, I won't take a single spirit crystal from the Qin clan. As long as I can be of service to exalted Immortal Xiao, everything else does not matter." Gong Xiaoxi resolutely rejected Qin Shengling's proposal. He didn't care about the spirit crystals at all. If he could follow Xiao Qin, the benefits he could obtain would definitely be much more precious than the spirit crystals. You really know how to take advantage of others." Xiao Qin could naturally guess Gong Xiaoxi's thoughts. However, he could also understand this fellow's thoughts. He patted him on the shoulder, nodded and said, "That's fine too. Then you can stay and mingle with me. However, I'll say this in advance. Sometimes I'll travel around and gain experience. When I'm back, if there's a chance, I'll give you some pointers. In short, I won't treat you badly." Then I'll thank Immortal Xiao in advance." Gong Xiaoxi nodded repeatedly. His face was smiling like a chrysanthemum. He was extremely happy. He had foreshadowed so much in the beginning, all for this sentence. He was thinking about how to bring it up tactfully so that he would not appear too greedy and would not put the exalted immortal in a difficult position. Just as he was pondering, exalted immortal Xiao actually took the initiative to speak up. Gong Xiaoxi finally relaxed. "Two esteemed masters, it's getting late. This Qin has prepared a small banquet in the residence. Let's not stand outside. Let's go in and eat while we talk." Qin Shengling saw that the two had come to an agreement and didn't say anything else. He raised his head to look at the sky and respectfully gestured for Xiao Chen and Gong Xiaoxi to enter the parlor. Xiao Chen nodded and walked over to hold Hongzhu's hand. He followed Qin Shengling into the parlor and casually sat down on the main seat. However, even if he didn't sit, Patriarch Qin and Gong Xiaoxi wouldn't have allowed him to sit on the guest seat. After Hongzhu sat down beside Xiao Chen, Gong Xiaoxi also followed closely behind. He sat down beside Qin Shengling and chatted amiably with him. Qin Shengling felt extremely flattered. After all, the acting elder of the Burning Heavens faction, who was previously out of his reach, had not only become his family's free tribute, but also sat down with him to enjoy a banquet and chat warmly. This was something that he didn't even dare to imagine. Gong Xiaoxi was also very happy in his heart because Xiao Chen had already promised to give him pointers. Even if he had to travel around and it was uncertain when he would return, this was equivalent to having something to look forward to. Chapter 1369. It must be known that Gong Xiaoxi had been stuck at the half-step nascent soul stage for many years. He had always been looking for an opportunity to break through, but he had never been able to do so. As time went by, it was inevitable that an obsession would grow in his heart. After all, for high-level cultivators, time no longer had any meaning. Most cultivators could live for hundreds of years as long as they were not killed by others, and those with high levels could live even longer. As time passed, situations like Gong Xiaoxi's that were difficult to break through would naturally occur. No matter how hard he tried, he would not be able to find a suitable way to advance. Even if he meditated in seclusion for a long time, it would not necessarily have any effect. The best way was to meet a famous teacher who could give him some guidance. Only then would he have a chance to smoothly break through the barrier. However, the cultivation world was incomparably vast and high-level cultivators were few and far between. The probability of meeting one was even smaller, and even if he did meet one, it was extremely difficult to persuade them to give him some guidance. Therefore, after Gong Xiaoxi received Xiao Chen's promise, he was naturally elated. After the banquet ended, Qin Shengling prepared a room for Gong Xiaoxi to use, while Xiao Chen and Hongzhu strolled to their own rooms. "Little brother Xiao Chen, we've been dual cultivating for several days, haven't we?" On a quiet and deep path, Hongzhu leaned on Xiao Chen's body and complained with a face full of dissatisfaction. "Why am I still only at the first level of the foundation establishment stage? Is it because you haven't shown me your true level? Is that why I'm breaking through so slowly? Have you become stupid from drinking too much?" Xiao Chen lightly knocked on Hongzhu's head and snappily said, "It's only been a few days? You've already advanced from the first level of the Qi condensation stage to the first level of the foundation establishment stage. You've broken through an entire stage and your cultivation speed is even faster than mine. You're actually not satisfied with such a rapid speed?" Hongzhu pursed his lips and pinched Xiao Chen's nose. "Of course I'm not satisfied. Tell me the truth, did you deliberately suppress my cultivation progress? Are you afraid that you'll lose face after I catch up to you?" Xiao Chen rolled his eyes to the back of his head and explained helplessly, "What nonsense are you talking about? I can't wait to have an expert at the same level as me by my side to help me. If you insist that there's a problem, then you can only blame yourself for your poor aptitude, which is why your cultivation progress is so slow." In fact, Xiao Chen was also a little puzzled. In the past, when he was dual cultivating with Cheng Menjing and the other girls in the martial arts world, their leveling speed was very fast. Why did they slow down when they were dual cultivating with Hongzhu in the immortal cultivation world? At this moment, the two of them had already arrived outside their room. Xiao Chen pushed open the door and waited for Hongzhu to enter before entering the room and closing the door. Hongzhu turned around, made a face at Xiao Chen and said angrily, "Look at what you're saying. I am the most powerful cultivation genius in the entire Hong family apart from Hong Yan. It's clearly because you're not doing your best that my cultivation progress is delayed. You actually have the nerve to blame me, you little rascal." Xiao Chen walked to the table and poured a cup of tea. He casually drank it and shrugged. Fine, if you insist on thinking that way, then there's nothing I can do. You. Hongzhu immediately pouted and snorted angrily. You've made me angry. I'm not dual cultivating tonight, so don't even think about seeing this big sister's proud figure. Is that so? Then it's up to you. I'll go cultivate on my own. Xiao Chen blinked innocently. He put down the cup of tea and walked to the sofa. He sat down and circulated his mental cultivation method, preparing to start cultivating. Due to the consecutive days of dual cultivating, Xiao Chen felt that he had vaguely touched the barrier of profound ascension stage level 7. Therefore he was also looking for an opportunity to break through. Since Hongzhu was unwilling to dual cultivate, then cultivating on his own would be the same. So, Chen. Hongzhu was about to explode from anger at the unromantic slow-witted Xiao Chen. She angrily stamped her feet and simply walked over to sit on Xiao Chen's lap. She hugged his neck with both hands and shook it non-stop as she angrily shouted, "No! If you don't help me, this big sister, advance, then I will never let you cultivate properly." Xiao Chen sensed Hongzhu's orchid-like breath, as well as the faint fragrance of wine on her body, as well as the rich fragrance of the combination of the two, as well as the surging waves that would rub against his arm from time to time. He couldn't help but feel a little restless. However, after a moment of distraction, Xiao Chen quickly used Yuan Qi to suppress his mind and helplessly said, "You don't want to dual cultivate, but you also won't let me cultivate. Little Hongzhu, what are you trying to do? Yee, why don't we do that? In any case, the night is long and we have nothing to do. We have to find something to do, right?" Hongzhu narrowed her eyes and said with a charming face, "Also, you see, we are husband and wife in name but not husband and wife in reality. No matter how you look at it, this doesn't make sense, does it?" After saying that, Hongzhu even mischievously blew a breath of air into Xiao Chen's ear. She stared at Xiao Chen with her alluring eyes that could make men go crazy for her. Cough cough. Xiao Chen coughed a few times and helplessly said, "It seems that you really have drunk too much. Not only are we not husband and wife in name, it is even more impossible for us to be husband and wife in reality. Right now we are just playing around in the Qin residence. You couldn't have taken it seriously, right?" Xiao Chen had always maintained a respectful distance from this little witch, Hongzhu. He had been teased by her several times in the past. If he took it seriously and she turned around and said that it was just a joke, wouldn't that make him look very stupid? Moreover, although Xiao Chen did not dislike Hongzhu, it was definitely not to the extent that he liked her so much that he could not let go of her. Therefore, he had a certain level of resistance towards her teasing and was able to keep a safe distance. "Are you sure you're telling the truth? Big sister, I have discovered that your eyes haven't been very honest these past few days when we were dual cultivating. You often stared lecherously at my breasts and thighs. Do you dare to say that you didn't have any strange thoughts in your head at that time?" Hongzhu puffed out her chest and deliberately rubbed her proud parts against Xiao Chen's body a few times as she taunted him with a smile. About that." Xiao Chen rubbed his nose, finally somewhat speechless. Because Xiao Chen had to admit that he had indeed taken a few glances when they were dual cultivating. However, at that time he did not have any improper thoughts. He had only inadvertently caught a glimpse and then looked at it purely from the perspective of appreciation. He did not expect that Hongzhu's eyesight would be so good. The lights in the room were clearly not turned on, but she was actually able to see his eyes clearly. Most likely, after becoming a cultivator, her six senses had been strengthened, so her eyesight had also become better. Chapter 1370. When Hongzhu saw that Xiao Chen had finally broken through, his indifferent expression turning into a somewhat embarrassed expression, there was no need to mention how happy Hongzhu was. "Look at you, you stinking brat. You clearly want to do that, so why are you still pretending?" Striking while the iron was hot, Hongzhu leaned against Xiao Chen's shoulder and giggled, all right. Don't be like this and that, since this big sister doesn't mind, why are you still being so shy? Why don't we take advantage of tonight's rare beautiful scenery and do what we need to do?" What we need to do? I don't know what you're talking about." Hearing Hongzhu's gentle and enchanting voice, Xiao Chen felt as if there was a feather tickling the tip of his heart, causing it to itch unbearably. Xiao Chen did his best to control the fire of lust in his body, but he could still feel a nefarious fire gradually rising in his lower abdomen. He suddenly realized that Hongzhu might have used some kind of seductive technique, otherwise he would not have been able to let his imagination run wild so easily. He could not help but feel that this was not good, and felt extremely helpless towards this maddening little demoness. You're still playing dumb. Hongzhu glanced at Xiao Chen with her seductive eyes, then fiercely pinched the tender flesh on his waist, and said in a soft, almost inaudible voice, "It's what you and Qing Minjing often do. You're such a strange person. If it was any other man in this situation, they would have already become impatient. I didn't think that you would actually be able to restrain yourself. You're simply a weirdo." "You're the weirdo, Qing Minjing, and I have never done that kind of thing you're talking about. She's not that casual." Hearing Hongzhu's words, Qing Minjing's figure suddenly appeared in Xiao Chen's mind, causing his entire body to tremble, the fire of lust completely extinguished, and he lightly pushed Hongzhu away. After hearing Xiao Chen's words and being pushed away, Hongzhu was slightly taken aback, but she did not have the time to be angry, instead asking in an extremely shocked voice, "Ah? Is this for real? You and Minjing have never done that?" "Of course it's true. There's no profit in lying to you." Xiao Chen rolled his eyes at Hongzhu as he thought to himself, "I wonder how the eldest miss is doing right now. Is the environment she's in safe or not?" Now Xiao Chen could only hope that she could be like him and learn to adapt to the situation. If she could meet a kind-hearted person like Qin Shengling, then at least she could temporarily have a place to stay. How is that possible? Isn't she your fiancée? Hongzhu could not understand the way Xiao Chen and Qing Minjing got along. He exclaimed in astonishment, "Besides, this era is no longer a feudal society. I see many primary and secondary school students in the secular world are in love, but you're still so conservative. This is our own choice." Xiao Chen was too lazy to extend this question further, so he waved his hand and said. Hongzhu, however, was still unwilling to let the matter drop. Somewhat gossipy, he asked, "Then you, little Hongzhu?" Without waiting for Hongzhu to finish speaking, Xiao Chen interrupted him. He looked into Hongzhu's eyes and said with a solemn expression, "If the Qin family is still unable to find any news about Qing Minjing and the others after a period of time, I plan to go to Luxian Prefecture to try my luck. When that time comes, you should stay with the Qin family so that you won't have to follow me everywhere. If there's any danger, No, I definitely won't agree." Before Xiao Chen could finish speaking, Hongzhu shook his head like a rattled drum and directly rejected Xiao Chen's suggestion. "Don't even think about leaving this big sister alone in the Qin family while you run off to the outside world to enjoy yourself. That's not what I meant." Xiao Chen smiled bitterly as he rubbed his nose. Why did this Hongzhu always think of such nonsense? Wasn't he just afraid that he wouldn't be able to take care of her if there were any unpredictable dangers? What if there were any problems? Hongzhu, who had originally been pushed away by Xiao Chen, once again came over and grabbed Xiao Chen's clothes. He stared at Xiao Chen and warned him word by word, "Little brother Xiao Chen, you better listen to me. I don't care what you mean. Either we go to Luxian Prefecture together or you don't have to think about going. I'll definitely pester you every day and won't let you leave my sight, humph." Alright, let's go together." Seeing Hongzhu gnashing his teeth in anger, Xiao Chen could only smile helplessly and agree to it. Although the people he had encountered so far were all weak chickens, once they left Yanlin town, it would be hard to say. Xiao Chen reckoned that he could encounter cultivators of the profound ascension stage or even higher level at any time. Since Hongzhu wanted to stay by his side, if he encountered a situation that he could not handle, he could only choose to escape with his flying sword. That's more like it. Hearing that Xiao Chen had finally agreed, Hongzhu happily kissed him on the cheek and nodded her head in satisfaction. In fact, although Hongzhu played it down on the surface, she was actually quite afraid that Xiao Chen would leave her. After all, she was a stranger in the cultivation world, and the only man she could rely on was Xiao Chen. Therefore she naturally wanted to hold on tightly to this one and only straw. "Alright, then it's settled. If you don't want to dual cultivate, then go to sleep. I'm going to start cultivating." Xiao Chen could also vaguely understand Hongzhu's feelings. Without saying anything else, he lightly patted her little head and casually changed the topic. "Who told you that I don't want to dual cultivate? Big sister, I will take off my clothes right now. Just you wait." Hongzhu pouted coquettishly. She immediately stood up and ran to turn off the light. Then she quickly stripped herself naked and returned to Xiao Chen's side with a blushing face. Xiao Chen shook his head in exasperation and amusement. He really had to give it to this little girl. Couldn't she have said that they were going to dual cultivate right from the start? Why did she have to come up with so many tricks? If a girl became tsundere, there was really no way to deal with her. However, Xiao Chen naturally would not say anything to her. After Hongzhu sat down, the two of them began to enter a state of dual cultivation. In the midst of meditation, A thought suddenly emerged in Xiao Chen's mind. Could it be that the progress of Hongzhu's cultivation was so slow because of the mental cultivation method she was currently using? When he passed on the Heaven's Stolen Fortune battle technique to Hongzhu, he did not ask the Elder Heaven Ancestor in advance. He did not know if it was because this mental cultivation method was not suitable for Hongzhu, which was why she was currently stuck at the first level of the foundation establishment stage. However, even if this was the case, Xiao Chen had no way to help Hongzhu obtain another mental cultivation method from the cultivation world. After all, this thing was a treasure that all the major sects and clans treated as a secret treasure and would not casually pass it on to outsiders. Even if Gong Xiaoxi was extremely fawning over him, Xiao Chen had no way to explain the cause and effect of this matter to him in detail. It was even more inconvenient for him to ask for the mental cultivation method of the sect. Chapter 1371. Now, Xiao Chen had used the price of giving Gong Xiaoxi some pointers in the future in exchange for Gong Xiaoxi's free position in the Qin clan. If Xiao Chen directly asked Gong Xiaoxi for the mental cultivation method, he might have to go to Gong Xiaoxi's sect and become an honorary elder, teaching disciples every day. With a thought, Xiao Chen thought of another possibility. Perhaps Hongzhu was the same as him. After cultivating the mental cultivation technique, he needed to stay at a certain stage for a long time and accumulate a certain amount of vitality before breaking through in one fell swoop. No matter how he thought about it, Xiao Chen could not come up with a suitable method. He could only take it one step at a time. When he had the time, he would ask the Elder Heaven Ancestor if this problem had occurred when he was cultivating the mental cultivation technique. Early the next morning, when the first rays of dawn had just appeared outside the window, Xiao Chen and Hongzhu had just finished their dual cultivation when they heard a soft knock on the door. The two of them looked at each other in bewilderment. Although the servants of the Qin family would bring breakfast over every day, it was only at a certain time. It had never been this early. Could it be that the people from the Tranquil Forest sect had already visited the Qin family? But the knocking didn't seem to be urgent. Who is it? Xiao Chen frowned and asked. Exalted Immortal Xiao, it's me, Xiaoxi. Have you woken up yet? Gong Xiaoxi's enthusiastic voice came from outside the door, carrying a tone of trepidation and trepidation. Are you crazy? What does it have to do with him whether I'm awake or not? How annoying. When Hongzhu heard that it was Gong Xiaoxi outside the door, she immediately curled her lips in dissatisfaction and muttered to herself. Originally, Hongzhu had wanted to tease Xiao Chen like she had the night before. She did not expect an uninvited guest to show up so early in the morning, instantly causing her to lose all interest. Xiao Chen was also a little confused and did not know why Gong Xiaoxi had come. He shouted at the door, "Wait a moment." Hongzhu had already put on her clothes and simply walked over to open the door. She glared angrily at Gong Xiaoxi before running to the bathroom to wash up. Gong Xiaoxi was a little confused by Hongzhu's angry glare and hesitantly stepped into the room. Only then did she see Xiao Chen putting on his coat. Oh, Exalted Immortal Xiao hasn't woken up yet? When Gong Xiaoxi saw this scene and recalled Hongzhu's furious expression, he finally seemed to understand something. His face turned red and he said with an embarrassed smile, I'm sorry, I came too early and disturbed the rest of Exalted Immortal Xiao and your Dao companion. At this time, Gong Xiaoxi was cursing himself in his heart. He was simply a big idiot. The couple was living a harmonious and loving life. Why didn't he think of it? He actually knocked on the door so recklessly. Forget it, it doesn't matter. Xiao Chen shrugged, put on his coat and walked to Gong Xiaoxi. What's the matter? It's not mealtime yet. Don't tell me you're here to have breakfast with me? Gong Xiaoxi forced a smile that was uglier than crying and explained reluctantly, it's like this. I wanted to find you to do morning exercises together, but I didn't expect you to still be resting, so, to disturb him so recklessly, he would definitely leave a bad impression on Exalted Immortal Xiao this time. When he thought of this, Gong Xiaoxi couldn't help but want to cry. You still do morning exercises? This is the first time I've heard of this. Don't tell me you have to run a few kilometers in the morning, climb a mountain, or do square dancing. Xiao Chen asked with a strange expression. In his opinion, morning exercises were something that only ordinary old people would do. After all, regardless of whether they were cultivators or cultivators, they had already reached a higher realm. Therefore, they basically wouldn't do simple muscle training. Even if they wanted to cultivate, they didn't have to do it in the morning. They could do high-intensity training at any time. What square dancing? Gong Xiaoxi was slightly taken aback by Xiao Chen's new term. Could this be Exalted Immortal Zhao's brand new cultivation method? That's not important. You can continue. Xiao Qin waved his hand. It seemed that he had misunderstood him. This morning exercise was not the usual morning exercise. Oh, actually, morning exercise is when the spiritual qi of heaven and earth is thick in the morning. Everyone gathers together to cultivate and then discuss what they have learned, Gong Xiaoxi explained with a smile. I see. Xiao Qin scratched his chin. He didn't expect the people in the world of cultivators to have such a custom. After he came to the Qin family, he went out very late every day. He really hadn't seen it before. But with Exalted Immortal Zhao's exquisite strength, he naturally doesn't need morning exercises anymore. Ah! Gong Xiaoxi laughed bitterly. Seeing Xiao Chen's confused expression, Gong Xiaoxi suddenly thought that Exalted Immortal Zhao's cultivation was so high that it probably had nothing to do with morning exercises anymore. Gong Xiaoxi was a little depressed. Originally, he wanted to use the opportunity of morning exercises to discuss with Exalted Immortal Zhao his problem of being stuck at the half-step nascent soul realm for a long time. If he could make Exalted Immortal Zhao happy, he could also ask him to give him some pointers. Otherwise, he wouldn't know where to find him when he left. Unfortunately, because of his ignorance, he had disturbed the rest of Exalted Immortal Zhao. Exalted Immortal Zhao must be very dissatisfied with him now. It seemed that there was no chance of him giving him pointers in the morning. Of course there's no need. Xiao Qin waved his hand disinterestedly. Suddenly he thought of something and asked directly, "Oh yes, I have a question. Yesterday, I heard you say that the old man from the Tranquil Forest sect would come to the Qin family? Do you know which stage of the nascent soul stage he is?" Gong Xiaoxi collected his thoughts and thought for a while before saying, "Probably around the second or third stage of the nascent soul stage. I didn't see it too clearly at that time. I only heard the sect leader of the Tranquil Forest sect call him Junior Uncle Ing. Then I came to the Qin family to report the news." Only the second or third stage. Xiao Qin curled his lips and said disdainfully, "If he was at the full foundation of the nascent soul stage, I might be able to try out some moves. But someone at this level actually has the cheek to come and find trouble? That's too boring. So weak. I think that guy doesn't know about Exalted Immortal Zhao's strength. That's why he came to provoke us. If he knew, he might have run far away to hide." Gong Xiaoxi said sincerely. Xiao Qin shook his head, patted his shoulder and said, "Forget it. When he comes, you can go and test him first. If you really can't beat him, then let me do it." "What? I'll go and fight him?" Gong Xiaoxi's face turned pale. He waved his hands and said, "But I'm only half a step into the nascent soul stage. I definitely can't beat him." Gong Xiaoxi also knew that Exalted Immortal Zhao didn't think highly of the old man Ing. However, he only had this little bit of strength. How would he be able to defeat him? If he went up, he would definitely be smacked to death. Chapter 1372. That's true. Xiao Qin nodded. After some thought he said, "Let's do it this way. I'll help you increase your strength to level 1 of the original infant stage. Then you can go out and fight with him. I'll just give you some pointers." Xiao Qin also felt that the standard of a half-step original infant stage cultivator was too low. Since Gong Xiaoxi was willing to work for the Qin family for free, and his goal was clear, he had to at least give him some benefits. What did you say? You can help me increase my strength?" Gong Xiaoxi was shocked. He thought there was something wrong with his ears. Not only was Exalted Deity Xiao not angry at him, he was actually helping him increase his cultivation? Although Gong Xiaoxi had heard before that some high-level cultivators in the immortal cultivation world could use ingenious methods to help low-level cultivators level up, that had always been a rumor. He had never encountered such a good thing. He didn't expect that he would really encounter such a good thing. "Mem, come here. Use your usual cultivation posture and sit here." Xiao Qin didn't care about Gong Xiaoxi's expression. He nodded and led him to the sofa. He pointed at the sofa and sat down. "Okay." Gong Xiaoxi was excited. He hadn't even done anything for the Qin family, yet Exalted Deity Xiao was willing to help him increase his cultivation level. Furthermore, this was after he had disturbed Exalted Deity Xiao's cultivation partner's rest. This was unbelievable. Exalted Deity Xiao was the best person in the world. After Gong Xiaoxi sat down, Xiao Qin briefly explained the method of dual cultivation. Then without further ado, he pulled Gong Xiaoxi's palms and placed them together. As he guided Gong Xiaoxi, he gradually entered the state of dual cultivation. At first, Gong Xiaoxi was still in a state of excitement. He didn't experience the uniqueness of dual cultivation. However, after he activated the mental cultivation method, he felt a majestic and rich primordial qi coming from Xiao Chen's palms. It circulated throughout his body, making him feel very comfortable. Focus and calm your qi. Activate your primordial qi and cultivate like usual. Don't daydream. While Gong Xiaoxi was still experiencing this primordial qi, Xiao Chen's stern voice suddenly rang out. Gong Xiaoxi's spirit was lifted, and he immediately continued to circulate his mental cultivation method, combining Xiao Chen's essence qi with his own essence qi, and circulating it through his meridians. As the vigorous yuan qi continued to flow, Gong Xiaoxi's body was quickly filled with an unprecedented feeling of strength. He only needed to twist his body slightly, and all the bones in his body seemed to have been reborn, crackling non-stop. His originally small meridians also expanded by a lot in an instant. Boom. In just a few breaths of time, a loud sound exploded in Gong Xiaoxi's mind. Gong Xiaoxi's body trembled as he clenched his fists tightly. Feeling the surging yuan qi in his body, a look of satisfaction appeared on his face as he thought to himself, "Is this the power of a level 1 nascent soul stage cultivator? Sure enough, it's not something that I, who have been a half-step nascent soul cultivator for so many years, can compare to." It felt so good. This was the first time Xiao Chen had helped a man improve his dual cultivation. After Gong Xiaoxi had successfully broken through, Xiao Chen tilted his head and said, "All right, you've successfully become a level 1 nascent soul stage expert. However, now is not the time to celebrate. Hurry up and go, AO." Without waiting for Xiao Chen to finish speaking, Gong Xiaoxi suddenly let out a strange cry of excitement. He then broke into a run and dashed out the door. "Ah, I've succeeded. I've finally broken through the barrier and advanced to level 1 of the nascent soul stage. This world is too beautiful." Gong Xiaoxi shouted wildly as he danced in the garden of the Qin clan like a child. He almost started dancing. Because he had been stuck in the half-step nascent soul stage for a long time, Gong Xiaoxi had always felt depressed about this matter. Now that he had suddenly broken through, all the pressure in his heart was released. However, while he was jumping 3 feet high in the garden, he had neglected a very serious problem. Xiao Chen, who had been interrupted, chased after Gong Xiaoxi with large strides. When he saw the elated and naked Gong Xiaoxi shouting and shouting in the garden, Xiao Chen couldn't help but hold his forehead and helplessly scold, "Hey! Gong Xiaoxi, are you King stupid? Your clothes are all torn and you're still running around like an idiot. Is there something wrong with your brain? Why aren't you changing your clothes? What King disgrace?" Because Gong Xiaoxi was shouting so loudly, many of the Qin residence's servants thought that something had happened. They all rushed over to check on the situation. When they saw the pure Gong Xiaoxi jumping in the garden, they were dumbfounded. That scene was too beautiful. In the end, even Hong Zhu, who was washing her face and rinsing her mouth, was alarmed. However, she had only come over to take a glance before she quickly turned her head away. In her heart, she had already poured out all the most vicious words she knew on Gong Xiaoxi's head. Gong Xiaoxi was in the middle of laughing, but in the blink of an eye, he was stunned by Xiao Chen's scolding. Suddenly, a light breeze blew past, and he felt a trace of coldness on his body. Very quickly he realized that something was wrong. When he looked down, his face completely darkened. He hurriedly covered his private parts and squatted on the ground, his face burning with heat. In fact, Gong Xiaoxi also knew that when he broke through to the next level, all his clothes would explode, leaving nothing behind. However, he was too excited this time and had completely forgotten about this matter. Now, not only was he jumping naked in someone else's garden, he was shouting loudly like a lunatic, attracting people over. In the end, he had completely lost all face in front of Xiao Chen and the Qin residence's servants. Now, Gong Xiaoxi could only hope that they would forget everything that they had seen today and not spread his scandal. Otherwise, in the future, in the Burning Heavens faction, no, even in the entire Luxian County, he would not be able to survive. Not long after, Qin Shengling was also alarmed. He hurriedly ran over and saw a group of people stretching their necks to surround Xiao Chen from afar. He stood helplessly at the door of the room, his hand holding his head as if he was having a splitting headache. Qin Shengling shouted a few times and squeezed into the crowd with great difficulty. Only then did he see the naked Gong Xiaoxi squatting on the ground. Immediately he was confused and did not know what had happened. However, Qin Shengling had been the clan leader for many years, so he calmed down immediately. He frowned slightly and first dispersed the surrounding servants who were watching the commotion. Then he ran to the side of the pond on the other side of the garden. He stretched out his hand and plucked a few larger lotus leaves. Then he turned around and covered a few sensitive parts of Gong Xiaoxi's body with them. After protecting Gong Xiaoxi, Qin Shengling bade farewell to Xiao Chen, then led Gong Xiaoxi out of the garden, probably to change his clothes. Chapter 1373. Husband Xiao Chen, what's wrong with that person? Not only did he knock on the door early in the morning, he was also running around without any clothes on. Furthermore, he was screaming like a ghost. Hongzhu said unhappily as she watched Gong Xiaoxi's awkward figure hurrying away. If she hadn't turned her head fast enough, she might have seen something she shouldn't have and even gotten a pinprick. He probably just forgot that he wasn't wearing any clothes. Xiao Chen rubbed her nose and sighed gloomily. Hongzhu blinked her eyes and suddenly remembered that after she left the room to wash up, only Xiao Chen and Gong Xiaoxi were left in the room. When she recalled that the fellow was not wearing any clothes, she immediately stared at Xiao Chen in surprise and said, What were you doing in the room? Could it be? Before Hongzhu could finish speaking, Xiao Chen hurriedly waved her hand to stop her speculation and snappily said, Don't make wild guesses. Just now, I was dual cultivating with Gong Xiaoxi and then helped him break through to the first level of the nascent soul stage. That's why his clothes were completely torn apart. Then why didn't you tell him to put on his clothes? Hongzhu blurted out in surprise. Xiao Chen spread her hands and said, I originally wanted to tell him to put on his clothes before going out, but I didn't expect him to be so excited that he rushed out without waiting for me to finish speaking. What else could I do? That's strange. Hongzhu suddenly thought of a question and tilted her head in confusion. His clothes were completely torn apart, so why weren't yours destroyed? Xiao Chen was just about to answer when Hongzhu suddenly slapped her forehead and asked with a look of sudden realization, Wow! So now you won't tear apart your clothes even when dual cultivating. Then why did you take off your clothes in front of this big sister when we were dual cultivating? Tell me honestly, did you have some ulterior motives towards me? I didn't even level up, so how could my clothes have exploded? Xiao Chen couldn't help rolling his eyes, completely speechless at Hongzhu's wild imagination. If you don't believe me, then next time I'll just dual cultivate with you while wearing my clothes, that way neither of us will lose out. Hongzhu pondered for a moment, then rolled his eyes and seriously said, Then you should take it off. Anyway, we've already dual cultivated so many times, what haven't we seen? What? Didn't you say you didn't want to see me naked? Why did you suddenly change your mind? Xiao Chen was extremely puzzled by Hongzhu's sudden change in attitude. There's no why, I just can't. Hongzhu pouted, snorted and said, When I think that I, your big sister, have to take off my clothes, but you don't have to, wouldn't that be a big loss for me? It's only fair if everyone takes off their clothes together. It's just a simple dual cultivation. What's so unfair about it? Xiao Chen was both annoyed and amused as he shook his head and teased, After all this time, it turns out that you're the one who has ulterior motives towards me. Xiao Chen had long seen through the little demoness Hongzhu's thoughts. She wanted nothing more than to have some sort of relationship with him that was beyond friendship. However, he really couldn't refuse her politely, otherwise he wouldn't even know how she was going to screw him over if she took advantage of him. It's good that you know. Husband Xiao Chen, your big sister has a lot of experience in certain aspects. Do you want to give it a try? Hongzhu winked at Xiao Chen as she spoke in a charming and slow voice. In truth, Hongzhu was just casually teasing Xiao Chen. She had no experience in this aspect at all and was still a standard virgin. She had even less combat experience than Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen was just about to refuse when he saw that Gong Xiaoxi had already put on his clothes and was jogging back. Heavenly Immortal Xiao, thank you for helping me so much. Gong Xiaoxi strode to stand in front of Xiao Chen and excitedly grasped his hands. Choking with emotion, she said, If I hadn't been fortunate enough to meet you this time, I don't know how long I would have to stay at this stage of half-step nascent soul. I'm really, really grateful. Xiaoxi will forever remember this in my heart and will never be able to repay you. Qin Shengling also came over and stood to the side as he watched Gong Xiaoxi continuously thank Xiao Chen. Although he didn't say anything, Qin Shengling was indeed secretly pondering in his heart. If he could let Heavenly Immortal Xiao find an opportunity to guide that brat Tao Tian, then the Qin clan would be even more like a fish in water in the future. He just didn't know if Heavenly Immortal Xiao would agree to this request of his. After all, the Qin clan was only a small clan in a small town. It couldn't compare to the Burning Heavens faction at all and couldn't give Heavenly Immortal Xiao as many benefits. So, Hongzhu was in the midst of cultivating his relationship with Xiao Chen when he was suddenly disturbed by Gong Xiaoxi. Recalling the scene from before and the situation from this morning, Hongzhu was so angry that he stomped his feet. He simply raised his leg and ruthlessly kicked Gong Xiaoxi's body. As he kicked, Hongzhu angrily shouted, "Why is it you again, you filthy uncle? Running around naked in someone else's residence, don't you feel ashamed? You really don't have the slightest sense of shame, humph." Gong Xiaoxi was in the midst of expressing his gratitude to Xiao Chen when he was suddenly kicked by Hongzhu. At first he was stunned. He felt that Hongzhu's kick didn't have much strength behind it. He reckoned that this little girl's level was relatively low and couldn't do much harm to him. However, when he thought of the glare that Hongzhu had given him, Gong Xiaoxi's mind suddenly lit up. This is Heavenly Immortal Zhao's Dao companion. So what if her level is low? I'll kill you with just a little pillow talk. Ouch. Gong Xiaoxi's legs immediately weakened and he directly fell to the ground. With a bitter face he apologized, "Master's wife, I'm sorry for disturbing you today. This disciple deserves to die. Please be magnanimous and spare me." "Bah, who's your Shifu?" Hongzhu was just about to scold him when he suddenly paused. His mind immediately became active. This guy is right. Since Xiao Chen had helped Gong Xiaoxi increase his level, then he was naturally Xiao Chen's disciple. As Xiao Chen's wife, it wasn't wrong for him to call her master's wife. Suddenly becoming master's wife, Hongzhu felt very happy. He deliberately cleared his throat and said seriously, "Forget it, seeing that you have such a sweet mouth, this master's wife can't be bothered to bicker with you. I'll let it go this time, but be more careful next time." "Hee, then I'll thank master's wife." Gong Xiaoxi saw that Hongzhu's expression had softened and was even faintly happy. He hurriedly increased his flattery and said, "I didn't expect master's wife to not only be as beautiful as a fairy, but also so magnanimous. You don't hold a grudge at all. I, Gong Xiaoxi, am truly fortunate to have met you and Master Xiao." Hongzhu clasped his hands behind his back and nodded with great satisfaction. Although he was clearly secretly delighted, he pretended to be calm and said, As expected of a deacon elder from a large sect, you're quite good at chatting. Later, master's wife will ask your master to teach you a few more times. Perhaps you'll soon be able to soar through the clouds and break through to a higher realm." Chapter 1374. Really? Thank you, master's wife. Gong Xiaoxi was grinning from ear to ear. He didn't think that this master's wife would be so easy to coax. He rolled his eyes and immediately came up with a new idea. Since that's the case, why don't master's wife and master come to our Burning Sky sect and stay for a few days? Gong Xiaoxi consciously changed from a fallen position to a half-kneeling position and asked with a flattering expression, "This way I can—" Gong Xiaoxi was just about to say a few more words of praise when he was rudely interrupted by Xiao Chen. Enough. Stop acting like a two-man show." Seeing the two of them echo each other, Xiao Chen was dazed for a long time before he finally understood what was going on. He couldn't help but kick Gong Xiaoxi again and said with a sullen expression, "Who the hell is your master? If I had a disciple like you, I would have vomited blood and died long ago. Hurry up and go somewhere cool, don't talk about such useless things." Ouch. Gong Xiaoxi had just gotten up when he was kicked again. He immediately let out a miserable shriek as he was kicked several dozen feet away. This time, Gong Xiaoxi wasn't faking it. He had really been kicked away. It should be known that Xiao Chen's strength was much higher than Hongzhu's. A casual kick would be enough to kill him. Fortunately, although Xiao Chen was angry on the surface, he didn't use any yuan qi. Therefore, Gong Xiaoxi only tumbled and looked a little embarrassed, but he didn't suffer any serious injuries. "Husband Xiao Chen, although this disciple of yours is a little old, he seems to be quite interesting. Look at how far he's rolled. His legs should be quite agile." Hongzhu chuckled as he tried to persuade Xiao Chen from the side. Right. Master's wife has such good eyes." Before Xiao Chen could say anything, Gong Xiaoxi crawled up again and quickly ran back. He nodded repeatedly with a shy face. Hongzhu was overjoyed to hear Gong Xiaoxi call her master's wife. He pulled Xiao Chen and said coquettishly, "Husband Xiao Chen, why don't you take him in? In the future he can still help us do some odd jobs. If he really can't do it, he can stay and serve us tea." It was clear that Gong Xiaoxi's sugar-coated bullets were very effective on Hongzhu. Otherwise he would not have tried so hard to put in a good word for him. Master's wife really has a good eye. Gong Xiaoxi immediately spouted nonsense with a straight face. When I was young, I was a servant in a big family. Whether it's serving tea or massaging, I've learned all of them. I guarantee that I can do them well. Immortal Xiao, don't hesitate. Just listen to Master's wife and accept me. In order to become exalted Immortal Xiao Chen's disciple, Gong Xiaoxi shamelessly rubbed his head against Xiao Chen's disciple before he was willing to give up. Gong Xiaoxi did not care about the issue of face. As long as he could get exalted Immortal Xiao to help him dual cultivate a few more times, even if he had to do some manual labor, so what? Even if he was asked to sing and laugh and be a clown, he was willing. After all, in the immortal cultivation world, strength was the foundation of everything. Where else could he find such a good thing to break through after dual cultivating with exalted Immortal Xiao once? Elder Gong, that doesn't sound right. Just as Gong Xiaoxi's voice fell, Qin Shengling, who had been standing silently at the side, suddenly spoke. He asked with a surprised expression, I remember that your father is an expert cultivator from the Burning Sky faction, right? When the Burning Sky faction was recruiting disciples, I was lucky enough to see him from afar. At that time you were by his side and you were quite young. Before Gong Xiaoxi could speak, Xiao Qin, who had a gloomy face, suddenly laughed. He looked at Qin Shengling and joked, so when you told me that you had seen Gong Xiaoxi before, it was actually just a glance from afar. I was wondering why when he came in yesterday he said that it was the first time he met you. Turns out you were just a passerby. He exalted Immortal Xiao must be joking. Qin Shengling was exposed by Xiao Qin, and the corner of his mouth twitched awkwardly. What do you know? Do I have to tell you in advance that I am going to be a servant? Gong Xiaoxi felt a little embarrassed when he was exposed on the spot. He glared fiercely at Qin Shengling and retorted stubbornly. Qin Shengling refused to let it go. He looked at Gong Xiaoxi in confusion and continued to ask, Elder Gong, you have such an illustrious background, why are you going to be a servant? Even if you are willing, your father will definitely not agree. If this news were to be spread, it would be too ugly. It would definitely damage the reputation of your Burning Sky faction. Actually, after being the family head for so long, Qin Shengling naturally had a way of observing people's words and expressions. Although he said so, he also understood the purpose of Gong Xiaoxi's nonsense. It was so that he could shamelessly stay by exalted Immortal Zhao's side and successfully become his disciple. Knowing Gong Xiaoxi's purpose, Qin Shengling still opened his mouth to expose it. Of course he also had his own thoughts. Actually, Qin Shengling hoped that Qin Taotian could also become Xiao Chen's disciple. If Xiao Chen really accepted Gong Xiaoxi as his disciple, then Qin Taotian probably wouldn't have a chance. After all, the gap between the two of them was still very big. Therefore, after Qin Shengling, who knew Gong Xiaoxi's background, heard his words, he thought of ways to obstruct Gong Xiaoxi and didn't want Gong Xiaoxi to succeed. Gong Xiaoxi was about to go crazy because of Qin Shengling. Fortunately, although he was furious, his brain was spinning rapidly. Suddenly, he had a flash of inspiration and hurriedly explained, I'm not lying. Our Burning Sky faction has a cooperative relationship with the Deda Immortal Cultivator's Chamber of Commerce. At that time, I just happened to want to go out to train, so I was sent to a large family to experience the hardships of the people's livelihood. What's so strange about this? You actually cooperated with the Deda Immortal Cultivator's Chamber of Commerce? Hearing Gong Xiaoxi's words, Xiao Chen's heart moved and immediately asked. Yes. Gong Xiaoxi nodded. Just as he was about to say something, he was stopped by Xiao Chen with a wave of his hand. That Chamber of Commerce seems to be quite famous in the cultivation world? It seems that many sects have cooperated with them. Xiao Chen frowned and asked. Their scale is quite large. Gong Xiaoxi hurriedly nodded and echoed, I heard that their coverage is very wide. Not only do they have a branch in our Lucian prefecture, but they also have branches in other prefectural towns. Many people are proud to be able to enter the Deda Immortal Cultivator's Chamber of Commerce. Then do you know what they do? Xiao Chen continued to ask. I'm not too sure what they do specifically. Gong Xiaoxi scratched his head and tried hard to recall the information he knew. I only know that they not only have signed agreements with many sects and clans in the cultivation world, they can mobilize their cultivators at will. Moreover, they also have many spirit crystal mines with sufficient reserves. Every day they can collect tens of thousands of spirit crystals, possibly even more. Chapter 1375. Xiaochen pondered for a while. Having spirit crystals was equivalent to having a reserve of funds. They would have the capital to negotiate and trade with others. Signing agreements with sects and clans would also mean that they would have a reserve of power in their hands. Their combat power would also be greatly increased. With money and manpower, it seemed like this Chamber of Commerce was planning something big. After thinking for a while, Xiaochen asked Gong Xiaoxi a question that he had been thinking about for a long time. Then, who is the boss behind this merchant association? I really don't know about this. Our Burning Sky sect is actually not very famous in the immortal cultivation world. We can only be considered as below average, so we don't know about that level of information. Gong Xiaoxi shook his head helplessly and said gloomily. Actually, Xiaochen had also guessed Gong Xiaoxi's answer. The information that Gong Xiaoxi provided could only confirm his previous speculation that the power behind the Dada Immortal Cultivation Merchant Association was extremely powerful. However, there was no other help. Ever since he entered the immortal cultivation world, Xiaochen had always wanted to find a suitable breakthrough point to understand the distribution of power in the immortal cultivation world. This way he could find the power with the strongest connections. Then he could use them to find the whereabouts of Qing Menjing and the rest of the girls. During this period of time, it seemed that the Dada Immortal Cultivation Merchant Association was indeed a good choice. However, Xiaochen still didn't understand their specific structure and who the big boss behind the scenes was. Thus he didn't dare to act rashly. Previously Xiaochen had an idea. He wanted to capture Director Lu, who came to the Qin clan to show off his strength but left with his tail between his legs. He wanted to force him to use the Merchant Association's power to help him find the rest of the people. However, from the looks of it now, he really couldn't do anything to him. Otherwise, not only would he lose his life, even the Qin clan might be implicated. It seemed like he had to consider other methods. Qin clan's bastards, listen up. I will give you the time it takes for a joss stick to burn. Immediately hand over the murderer who killed the secluded forest sect's cultivator, Guan Weikai. Otherwise, I will tear everyone in the Qin clan into pieces. Just as Xiaochen's thoughts were in a mess, a deafening roar came from outside the Qin residence, forcibly interrupting his train of thought. According to the unbridled aura released by the newcomer, Xiaochen judged that the newcomer should be at the second or third level of the nascent soul realm. Furthermore, the aura was slightly fluctuating. He reckoned that the newcomer had just broken through to the next level not long ago. Gong Xiaoxi was thinking about how to continue begging Xiaochen to accept him as a disciple when he suddenly heard a sound coming from outside. He subconsciously muttered, "Hey? This person's voice is very familiar. I seem to have heard it somewhere not long ago." Qin Shengling and Hong Zhu looked at him as if they were looking at an idiot. Could it be that this guy's memory had deteriorated with age and he had forgotten why he had come here so quickly? That person's words clearly indicated that the Qin family of the Tranquil Forest sect was here to pick a fight. Gong Xiaoxi thought about it carefully again and then suddenly realized something. He slapped his forehead and said, "Oh, I remember. He is that old thing with the surname Ing from the Tranquil Forest sect. I didn't think that he would actually dare to come here. He must be tired of living. If that's the case, then go out and meet him. It's also a good opportunity to test out the strength of the nascent soul realm that you have just broken through to." Xiaochen shrugged his shoulders indifferently and instructed calmly. "Understood. I was just worried that there was no one for me to test my moves on." Gong Xiaoxi replied excitedly. He rolled up his sleeves and ran in the direction of the main door. Gong Xiaoxi had just broken through to the first level of the nascent soul realm. He was bursting with a sense of accomplishment and felt that he was very awesome. Furthermore, he had exalted Immortal Xiao to back him up. He was full of confidence and directly rushed out of the door, ready to slap old Ghost Ying's face. "Husband Xiaochen, don't I feel that this is a little inappropriate?" Looking at Gong Xiaoxi's ambitious back, Hong Zhu was a little worried. She frowned and said, "Although Gong Xiaoxi has broken through, the other party reached the nascent soul realm earlier than him. He must be much more experienced than him. Why don't we go out and take a look?" At this moment Hong Zhu was indeed very worried. If Gong Xiaoxi was killed by the other party, then wouldn't he have no one to help him? Xiaochen nodded and led Hong Zhu and Qin Shengling towards the main door. Xiaochen naturally understood that there was a considerable gap between Gong Xiaoxi and the other party. It could even be said that they were not on the same level at all. The reason why he chose to let Gong Xiaoxi take the lead was mainly to give him a chance to hone himself. Moreover, the other party's strength was only at the second or third level of the nascent soul realm. With him holding the line, Gong Xiaoxi basically did not pose too much of a threat. Gong Xiaoxi did not know that Xiao Chen had followed him. He covered his head and anxiously rushed to the main door. When he raised his head, he saw an old man dressed in a dark blue robe standing at the door. At this moment, his hands were behind his back and he was staring at the plaque hanging above the main door of the Qin Manor. A trace of killing intent condensed in his cold eyes. Gong Xiaoxi looked and sure enough, it was a familiar face. It was the old man who had provoked the Burning Sky faction yesterday, old Ghost Ing from the Tranquil Forest sect. "Oh, you old thing, you have quite a lot of guts." Gong Xiaoxi could not be bothered to delay any longer. He sneered and said sarcastically, "Your own faction's disciples were killed by the Qin family, and now you still dare to come here to die. I admire your courage very much." "You're full of nonsense." The old man in blue snorted angrily. He withdrew his gaze from the plaque and said coldly, "After waiting for so long, your Qin family finally dares to come out. Gong Xiaoxi, why is it you? Why are you at the Qin family?" This old man in blue was the senior uncle of the sect leader of the Tranquil Forest sect, Ing Taichi. He was also the senior uncle Ing, who had just broken through to the third level of the nascent soul realm 2 days ago. The Tranquil Forest sect and the Burning Sky faction were the two main factions in the Lucian prefecture. Therefore, Ing Taichi was not unfamiliar with the elder deacon of the Burning Sky faction, Gong Xiaoxi. What surprised Ing Taichi was that he had clearly seen Gong Xiaoxi at the entrance of the Burning Sky faction yesterday. Why was he here today? Could it be that he was a helper invited by the Qin family? "Old Ghost Ing, you control the sky, the earth, and the air, but can you control me? I like to be a guest at the Qin family, can't I?" Gong Xiaoxi squinted his eyes and shook his legs. He asked loudly, "You old thing, why are you shouting at someone's door so early in the morning? What is the meaning of this? Can't you let me sleep well? What does it have to do with me where you go to be a guest?" Ing Taichi glared at Gong Xiaoxi and said with a murderous look, "I have my reasons for coming to the Qin family. I don't believe that you don't know. How would I know what you are doing here instead of dancing in the square? Could it be that you are jogging to train your body?" Gong Xiaoxi used what he had just learned and used a new term from Xiao Chen. Chapter 1376. Ing Taichi was startled at first, then he said fiercely, "Then I'll tell you again. The Qin family members killed the disciples of my secluded forest sect. I must make the murderer pay with his life. If you want to interfere, I don't mind sending you on your way. Anyway, I don't like the people of Burning Sky sect. Killing one of you won't be enough." "Ah, you old chicken-ate lantern, you sure talk big." Gong Xiaoxi laughed for a while, then he suddenly changed his expression and said seriously, "Since you don't know how to appreciate kindness, then don't leave today." "What did you say?" Ing Taichi was about to laugh at his arrogance, but he was stuck in the middle of his sentence. Gong Xiaoxi quickly took out his crimson flame bead, muttered an incantation and injected some yuan qi into it. Then he pushed his right palm lightly, and the originally weak flame in the crimson flame bead suddenly grew, wrapping the entire bead in it, turning it into a small fireball, and quickly flew towards Ing Taichi. You've actually broken through to level 1 of the original infant stage?" Looking at the oncoming fireball, and the yuan qi that Gong Xiaoxi was emitting, Ing Taichi blurted out in shock. "How is it? Are you afraid? Have a taste of the power of my crimson flame bead." Gong Xiaoxi shouted proudly. Unfortunately, Ing Taichi was only distracted for a moment. He quickly came back to his senses. He pushed off the ground with his toes and dodged to the left, dodging the fireball attack by a hair's breadth. Although Ing Taichi successfully avoided the direct attack of the fireball, his dark blue robe, which was fluttering in the wind, was accidentally set on fire. Smelling the faint burning smell of the cloth, Ing Taichi's face changed, and he quickly waved his hand to cut off the corner of his robe. Seeing that his originally elegant blue robe was cut off, the murderous intent in Ing Taichi's eyes became even more intense. "Old thing, I didn't expect your reaction to be so fast. Why don't you try this again?" Gong Xiaoxi did not care about Ing Taichi's reaction at all. He grinned and controlled the crimson flame bead to fly back. Gong Xiaoxi chanted another incantation, extinguishing all the flames around the bead. Then the scarlet flame bead grew larger and larger, almost as tall as a person. Then with a flash, Ing Taichi, who was still looking at the clothes, was sucked into the bead. Seeing that Ing Taichi was hit, Gong Xiaoxi immediately changed the shape of his mouth and changed to another incantation. The flame that was jumping in the bead wrapped the bead again and burned fiercely on the outside. As the flames burned brighter, the temperature inside the scarlet flame bead continued to rise. It looked as if it was going to roast Ying Taichi inside. At this moment, Xiao Qin and Hong Zhu had also arrived at the main entrance. Qin Shengling had gone to arrange for the guards to be on guard. Although Elder Gong and Xiao Qin were overseeing things, he still had to do his job properly. Xiao Qin watched as the scarlet flame pearl burned continuously, and Ying Taichi, who was inside, was sweating profusely. Ying Taichi's face was flushed as he struggled to resist. Xiao Qin asked impatiently, "Gong Xiaoxi, what game are you playing? Hurry up and get rid of that old man. Don't dawdle here and waste my time." "Hehe, master's wife, you're here." Turning his head to look behind him, Gong Xiaoxi saw that it was Xiao Qin and Hong Zhu. He happily explained, "That old man relied on the fact that the secluded forest sect was a little stronger than us and usually attacked our burning sky sect. But today he actually fell into my hands because of his carelessness. Anyway, I don't plan on killing him, so I might as well torture him a little longer. It can be considered as helping our sect disciples vent their anger." "Oh, with your current cultivation, forget about killing that old man. It would be good if you could even hurt him." Xiao Qin shook his head and shifted his gaze to the huge fireball. He said, "I advise you not to play with fire anymore, otherwise? Forget it, it's already too late." Xiao Qin was very clear that since the opponent's strength was much stronger than Gong Xiaoxi's, he obviously wouldn't be captured so easily. He had only been fooled by Gong Xiaoxi, who had suddenly leveled up. Besides, in this short period of time, the opponent had already begun to counterattack. "What do you mean?" Gong Xiaoxi scratched his head in confusion. He followed Xiao Qin's gaze and looked back, only to find that the fire of his scarlet flame bead was gradually weakening. Ying Taichi, who was trapped inside, was surrounded by a layer of white mist. Moreover, that mist was still condensing, and some of it had even turned into ice crystals. Crack. Following a crisp sound, a small crack suddenly appeared on the surface of the scarlet flame bead, and a trace of cold air gradually seeped out from the crack. Gong Xiaoxi's expression changed as he looked at the crack in disbelief. He thought that it was Ying Taichi's smokescreen, so he rubbed his eyes with force. However, he discovered that not only did the crack not disappear, it was also continuously expanding. Following the expansion of the crack to its limit, the entire scarlet flame bead was finally split into two and directly split open. The cold air that had condensed inside the bead also surged out violently, dispersing in all directions. Within the cold air, a dark blue strip of cloth was faintly discernible. "How is this possible?" Gong Xiaoxi cried out involuntarily. "The scarlet flame bead is an artifact that has been passed down from the ancient times of our Burning Heavens faction. How could it be split into two so easily? How did that old thing do it?" Gong Xiaoxi, who saw this scene, was already dumbfounded. He stood there dumbfounded, not knowing what to do. If his father knew that the scarlet flame bead had been destroyed in his hands, then he would be finished. A mere insignificant skill. Do you think that only your Burning Heavens faction has such a high-grade artifact? Ying Taichi's sinister and aged voice suddenly sounded in the cold air. Gong Xiaoxi squinted his eyes and looked over, only to see Ying Taichi lightly waving his hand, parting the white fog in front of him. His right hand held a silver-white crystal, and his left hand pointed at Gong Xiaoxi. He said lightly, "If it wasn't for the fact that this old man also has the ice soul crystal that has been passed down from the ancient times, I'm afraid I would have really fallen for your trick today." "How dare you? It seems that I was too careless. I forgot that your cultivation technique is of the water attribute, you old fart." *CK. Gong Xiaoxi shook his head hatefully. He was about to continue speaking when he suddenly felt a chill. He raised his head in puzzlement and looked forward. In the end, the scene in front of him scared him so much that he almost peed his pants on the spot. He saw Ying Taichi quickly inject Yuan Qi into the crystal, and then the silver-white crystal flew into the air with a whoosh. It circled around Ying Taichi once and instantly withdrew the white fog behind him into the crystal. Chapter 1377. In the blink of an eye, as soon as the white mist was withdrawn, the crystal suddenly let out a buzzing sound, condensing the mist into countless sword-like icicles. Then, with a sharp piercing sound, the icicles shot towards where Gong Xiaoxi was standing from all directions. "What the hell?" Gong Xiaoxi cursed inwardly. He did not dare to be careless when he saw the situation. First, he covered his body with essence to strengthen his defense. Then he stared at the ice thorns flying at him and used his movement technique to dodge them with all his might. Unfortunately, there were too many ice spikes. Although Gong Xiaoxi tried his best to dodge, he was not careful. His right leg was immediately cut by one of the ice spikes. Moreover, a thin layer of frost quickly formed on the wound and continued to spread. Feeling a bone-piercing chill coming from his right leg, Gong Xiaoxi panicked. What was even more frightening was that he found that because the wound on his leg was frozen, his dodging was forced to slow down. Po, po, po. As Gong Xiaoxi's movements slowed down, his limbs were quickly cut by the ice spikes. What was even more frightening was that every cut began to rapidly freeze. The bone-piercing chill and heart-wrenching pain made Gong Xiaoxi's face pale and he felt very uncomfortable. "Kid, weren't you quite awesome just now? You can't take it anymore after being stabbed a few times?" Ing Taichi sneered and mocked. Without waiting for Gong Xiaoxi to respond, Ing Taichi continued to pour primordial qi into the ice soul crystal and controlled it to create dozens of ice spikes. He aimed them at Gong Xiaoxi's chest from afar. Then, the corners of his mouth curled into a cruel smile. He casually waved his sword fingers and the ice spikes responded. Gong Xiaoxi felt a strong chill in his heart when he saw the extremely sharp icicle heading straight for his heart. He hurriedly cried out, Master, save me. I can't beat that old man. Help me take care of him." "Sai, I told you to be careful and finish the battle as soon as possible. You just wouldn't listen. In the end, don't you still need me to take action? How useless." Xiao Qin shook his head helplessly. He condensed a fireball and threw it out, reprimanding him mercilessly. The fireball landed accurately in front of Gong Xiaoxi and immediately burst into a wall of fire. All the approaching ice spikes instantly evaporated and turned into water vapor. "Phew, that scared me. Master is so awesome." Gong Xiaoxi, who was saved from the brink of death, heaved a sigh of relief and sat on the ground. However, Gong Xiaoxi did not dare to be negligent. He immediately circulated his yuan qi in an attempt to melt the frost on his limbs. However, the effects were extremely slow. His wounds still had a strange icy blue color. Although the situation was serious, Gong Xiaoxi had no other choice but to use his qi. He could only use his primordial qi to melt it. Otherwise he would be. If he did not do anything, the frost would freeze his blood. And who? Ing Taichi originally thought that he could kill Gong Xiaoxi directly. He did not expect that he would be saved by a young man. He could not help but be slightly startled and said with a gloomy face, "I didn't expect a small Qin family to be able to invite so many experts. You quickly tell me your name. This old man doesn't kill nameless people." After being stunned for a moment, Ing Taichi quickly realized that this young man's strength should not be low. He had only used a small fireball to evaporate all the icicles condensed by his ice crystal. He was probably not easy to deal with. Xiao Qin could not be bothered with Ing Taichi's provocation. He reached out and gently patted Gong Xiaoxi's shoulder. He quietly injected a trace of primordial qi into Gong Xiaoxi's body to help him melt the ice on his body. Then he took the opportunity to heal all the wounds. "Thank you for saving me, Master. Xiaoxi will never forget it." Gong Xiaoxi was pleasantly surprised to find that his injuries had completely healed. He immediately stood up and moved his hands and feet. He thanked Xiao Qin gratefully. When Ing Taichi saw this scene, he could not help but be even more surprised. It should be known that if the ice crystal's attack encountered an attribute martial skill that restrained it, it might really be blocked. But the most extraordinary thing about it was that after the enemy was hit, the power of frost would be like moss in a dark corner, dispelling and growing again. It would become an inextinguishable hidden injury in the body's skin. Even if the enemy managed to escape after being injured, this kind of injury would follow him forever. Every time it was windy, rainy, or cold winter, it would cause unbearable pain, but there was no cure. Conventional medicine could not cure it at all. Just now, he only saw Xiao Qin put his hand on Gong Xiaoxi's shoulder. How could he directly cure Gong Xiaoxi? Ing Taichi could not help but be puzzled. He stared at Xiao Qin with a solemn expression and did not dare to launch a sneak attack. Xiao Qin looked at the lively Gong Xiaoxi and said angrily, "You have just been promoted to the nascent soul stage. Just treat this as practice. Do you know how big the gap between you and others is? Go back and quickly consolidate your cultivation. Don't come out and embarrass yourself. I don't have a disciple as weak as you." "Hee, I know." Gong Xiaoxi smiled and nodded repeatedly. He first bent his waist and took a few steps back. Suddenly, he thought of something and said with an evil smile, "That's right, Master, I have a favor to ask of you. Please don't kill that old thing. Just beat him until he's crippled. That way he can live to return to the secluded forest sect. In this way, our Burning Heavens faction can laugh at them. All right. You're so troublesome. Xiao Qin waved his hand impatiently and said, since you've asked me, then I'll reluctantly agree. Anyway, it's just a matter of one move. Thank you, Master. Master is too good to your disciple. Gong Xiaoxi couldn't help but be overjoyed. He hurriedly thanked him and took a few steps back. He stood beside Hong Zhu and looked at Ying Taichi with a complacent expression that said, let's see how you die. Looking at the livid Ying Taichi, Xiao Qin shrugged his shoulders as if nothing had happened. He first moved his shoulders leisurely, then waved at him and said, old thing, did you hear what we said just now? Hurry up and let this young master punch you. I promise I'll be careful. I'll only beat you until you're crippled. I definitely won't beat you to death. Brat, although I don't know who you are, you're really too arrogant. Ying Taichi looked at Xiao Qin and Gong Xiaoxi discussing among themselves and directly deciding his fate. He couldn't help but laugh in anger as he stared at Xiao Qin and said sternly, oh, is that so? Xiao Qin spread out his hands and said indifferently, so what? Chapter 1378. Don't waste your time. Do you think a ball of fire can extinguish my 9-frost snowstorm? Too naive. What? Ying Taichi said proudly. Before he could finish his sentence, the confident expression on his face suddenly froze. This, what? Ying Taichi clutched his abdomen with his trembling hands and knelt on the ground. His face was full of disbelief. What just happened? What happened to his Dantian? After returning to the tranquil forest sect with much difficulty, Ying Taichi faced the anxious sect leader Guan. He did not choose to tell him the truth, but instead rested in the secret room for a few days. When he felt slightly better, Ying Taichi ordered his disciple to call sect leader Guan over. He planned to discuss the future plans of the tranquil forest sect with him. Ying Taichi only felt a faint flash of bluish-purple light. Then the snowstorm that was about to reach Xiao Qin suddenly disappeared. It was swallowed up completely, leaving not a single trace behind. The cold air that was originally dissipating in the surroundings immediately gathered together, forming a snowstorm with ice crystals. It emitted a terrifying might mixed with a killing intent that could destroy heaven and earth, and swept toward Xiao Qin with a whistling sound. There's no need for that. Ying Taichi shook his head and said helplessly, I'm completely crippled. I didn't expect the Burning Sky sect to hide such a powerful expert. With just one punch my Dantian was completely shattered. It seems that if the Tranquil Forest sect does not quickly find some external help, I'm afraid we won't be able to survive in the future. Old thing, your Dantian has already been destroyed by me. At this time Xiao Qin had already returned to the front door. He looked down at Ying Taichi and said, if you don't want to die, hurry up and scram. Go back and wait for the Burning Sky sect to laugh at you. The fire of the underworld came out of Xiao Qin's body with a whoosh. It first circled around Xiao Qin happily, then turned around and quickly rushed towards the snowstorm that was wreaking havoc towards Xiao Qin. I didn't expect. All of this was actually caused by your Burning Heavens faction. I was wondering why Guan Weikai, who was at the 7th level of the Gold Core stage, suddenly died. So it was also your doing. Ying Taichi coldly glanced at the guards who were glaring at him. He stared at Gong Xiaoxi and gritted his teeth. I'll remember this. Sooner or later I'll pay you back in full. Your Burning Heaven faction, just you wait. Not much, but today you, Gong Xiaoxi, and everyone else from the Qin family will not leave alive. Ying Taichi grunted coldly as his eyes suddenly glowed brightly. After that, he injected all the energy in his body into the Isoul crystal. If not for his Yuan Qi being depleted, Ying Taichi would have thought that he had not let go of the 9-chill snowstorm at all. However, in the depths of Ying Taichi's heart, the seed of revenge had already been firmly rooted. As long as he could survive this time, he must eliminate the Burning Sky faction, no matter what price he had to pay. Seeing that there was no more show to watch, Hong Zhu made a face at Ying Taichi and skipped away with Xiao Qin. This magic trick is not bad. Unfortunately, you overestimate yourself. Xiao Qin shook his head. His body did not move as he ordered, Nethery, go and extinguish the blizzard. Looking at the bluish-purple flame floating in the air, Ying Taichi was so shocked that he did not know what to say. One should know that the 9-chill snowstorm was his ultimate move. It was a consummate skill that could only be released after he had condensed the essence of the Isoul crystal. He did not expect that it would be extinguished by a mere flame. Ing Taichi did not intend to bicker with Gong Xiaoxi anymore. Enduring the sharp pain in his dantian, he turned around and dragged his heavy footsteps out of the Qin family. One should know that Ing Taichi was the only cultivator in the Tranquil Forest sect who had broken through to the third level of the original infant stage. Now that even he had been crippled, wouldn't the Tranquil Forest sect be at the mercy of others? Before Ing Taichi could recover from the shock, he suddenly felt a blur in front of him as if a figure had passed by. Then there was a tearing pain in his dantian, and the remaining primordial qi in his body disappeared, leaving not a single drop behind. Ha! Old Deviling, listen to me clearly. Looking at Ing Taichi's pained expression, Gong Xiaoxi could not help but laugh out loud. He pointed at Ing Taichi and shouted, "He is my master, exalted immortal Xiao. As for his name, a rookie like you does not deserve to know it. Junior Uncle Ing, how are your injuries? Do you want me to send someone to get you some heavenly treasures so that you can recover faster?" After sect leader Guan was summoned, he looked at the pale Ing Taichi and asked with a concerned expression. Ing Taichi looked at Xiao Chen's gradually disappearing figure with his eyes wide open. He then turned to look at Gong Xiaoxi, who had a smug look on his face. His mind flashed like a spark. He had finally pieced together the entire sequence of events. "I see. Good, very good. This time I really understand that you actually have a master." Ing Taichi struggled to stand up and glared at Gong Xiaoxi as he said through gritted teeth, "You old fart, you really have a lot of bullshit. With your insignificant cultivation, you still want to fight against my master?" Gong Xiaoxi curled his lips and did not take Ing Taichi's threat to heart. With a face full of disdain, he mocked, "Moreover, your cultivation has already been destroyed. You will probably die on the way back to the Tranquil Forest sect. You still want to take revenge? What a fool's dream." "You? Who are you?" Ing Taichi knelt on the ground with his forehead full of sweat. His face was pale and the corner of his mouth could not stop twitching. With great difficulty, he squeezed out a few words from his throat. Thinking of the uncertain future of the Tranquil Forest sect, Ing Taichi sighed heavily. Ever since his dantian was destroyed, he had become a lot older and looked very weak. "How is it? You didn't expect it, did you?" Gong Xiaoxi saw that Ing Taichi, who was originally high and mighty in front of the Burning Sky sect, was now as pathetic as a stray dog. It was as refreshing as drinking ice water on a hot summer day. Gong Xiaoxi said proudly, "My master is in a good mood today and is willing to spare your life. Hurry up and go back to the Tranquil Forest sect." After saying this casually, Xiao Chen turned around gracefully and walked slowly into the Qin family with his hands behind his back. Actually, to deal with a low-level immortal cultivator like Ing Taichi, Xiao Chen only needed to smash his dantian with one punch. He did not need to use his true strength at all. "What? How did your dantian?" Sect leader Guan, who did not know the inside story, could not help but be shocked and asked stutteringly. Chapter 1379. There's no need to investigate. Before sect leader Guan could finish, Ing Taichi waved his hand and interrupted, "I already know the ins and outs of this matter. The whole thing was planned by Gong Xiaoxi from the Burning Sky faction. In fact, he secretly has a master who killed Guan Weikai. Although that person is young, he is very powerful. His cultivation is at least at level 5 or 6 of the original infant stage. Otherwise, he would not have been able to cripple me." Gong Xiaoxi. At this moment, sect leader Guan wished he could swallow this name alive. He shouted angrily, "This Gong guy is so despicable. Not only did he kill Guan Weikai, but he also seriously injured you." There was also a hint of sadness in Ing Taichi's eyes. Although it was not Gong Xiaoxi who did it directly, it was him who indirectly caused this result. Martial Uncle Ing, the secluded forest sect must avenge this. Sect leader Guan was so angry that his face turned red. He smashed the table beside him with his fist, and the wood chips flew everywhere. His eyes were full of hatred. He gnashed his teeth and said, "If this matter is spread out, we will be laughed at by the other clans and factions in the Lucian prefecture." "Avenge? Then tell me, how should we avenge this? Since you are so proactive, why don't we send you to kill Gong Xiaoxi and his master? What do you think?" Ing Taichi rolled his eyes. He was speechless at sect leader Guan's blind impulse and said impatiently, "This." Sect leader Guan's words were stuck in his throat. He wanted to say that he should go, but he was not strong enough. Even if he went, he would only be beaten up and used as cannon fodder. It was better not to go out and embarrass himself. Ing Taichi was too lazy to care about the embarrassed sect leader Guan. Instead, he lowered his head and stared at the scattered sawdust on the ground. He pondered for a moment and said calmly, "Tell the disciples to reduce their activity range. Tell them not to go against the Burning Sky faction for the time being." Sect leader Guan was stunned. When he was about to speak, Ing Taichi added, "One more thing. Find the director of the Dada Immortal Cultivator's Chamber of Commerce as soon as possible. I have something very important for him to do." "Marshal Uncle Ing, could it be that you want to hire experts from the Dada Immortal Cultivation Chamber of Commerce through Director Lu to kill Gong Shaoxi's master?" Sect leader Guan frowned slightly and said disapprovingly, "Although this plan is feasible, the asking price of the Dada Immortal Cultivator's Chamber of Commerce is too high. If the reinforcements we send are killed by that guy again, our secluded forest sect won't be able to afford the spiritual crystals." Originally, sect leader Guan also had this idea. He planned to seek help from the Immortal Cultivator's Chamber of Commerce to take revenge. However, if he wanted to suppress and kill an expert at the 5th or 6th level of the nascent soul stage, he would have to hire at least an expert at the peak of the nascent soul stage. The Immortal Cultivator's Chamber of Commerce did have cultivators of this level, but the hiring fee would easily be 10 to 20,000 spirit crystals. It was not that the Tranquil Forest sect could not afford the spiritual crystals. It was just that they had yet to find out the capabilities of the other party. If even a full nascent infant realm cultivator could not defeat the other party and was killed instead, the compensation would be enough to make the entire Tranquil Forest sect disappear from Lucian Prefecture. "I asked you to find him, so hurry up and find him. What's the point of talking so much? I have my own plans for this. Don't ask so much." Ing Taichi waved his hand impatiently. Without waiting for sect leader Guan to continue speaking, he stood up and walked into the house. Seeing Uncle Ying's silhouette disappear, sect leader Guan had no choice but to leave the secret chamber. He called for a disciple under him and passed down the order that Uncle Ying had said not to act arbitrarily. He also instructed the disciple to pass the order to the ears of every disciple of the Tranquil Forest sect. After the disciple left, sect leader Guan returned to his own residence. He first soaked the voice-transmitting amulet in water, wanting to speak directly to Director Lu. He did not expect that after waiting for a long time, there would be no response from the other party. Sect leader Guan had no choice but to use another method. He inserted the message that Uncle Ing wanted to convey into the voice-transmitting amulet and sent it to the other party. Then, as he waited for the reply, he tried to figure out Uncle Ying's intentions for doing so. After Ing Taichi's order was passed down, anyone could guess that the Tranquil Forest sect had suffered another setback. Originally, they had hoped that Uncle Ing would be able to turn the situation around beautifully. Unexpectedly, they had suffered a setback instead. Everyone in the Tranquil Forest sect felt very depressed and could not muster up any fighting spirit. On the other hand, the archenemy of the Burning Sky faction was the exact opposite. After receiving the latest report from the spy, all the disciples and higher-ups were extremely excited. They clapped their hands and cheered. Some disciples even deliberately went to the Tranquil Forest sect to provoke them. The disciples of the Tranquil Forest sect had received the order and did not dare to go against the Burning Sky faction. They could only swallow their anger and suffer helplessly. After such incidents happened a few times, it did not take long for the rumors to spread in the Lucian Prefecture. The rumors were even more exaggerated than before. After the sect leader of the Burning Sky faction, Duan Suqing, received the news, he felt a little strange. According to what he knew, Gong Shaoxi had only gone to the Qin family to inform them so that they could be prepared and escape if they could. How could he cripple the experts of the Tranquil Forest sect in the blink of an eye? Unable to figure it out, Duan Suqing used the directed audio amulet to look for Gong Shaoxi. He wanted to understand the real situation. Gong Shaoxi did not hide anything and explained the sequence of events in detail. He said that due to fate he got to know a very powerful exalted immortal master. According to his observation, the exalted immortal master was at least an original infant stage perfected immortal cultivator, or even higher. According to Gong Shaoxi, this exalted immortal master not only crippled Ing Taichi's Dantian, but also helped him to break through to the original infant stage. This exalted immortal master was simply a super expert. If Duan Suqing had not shamelessly followed the exalted immortal master, he might have missed out on such a powerful person. After listening to Gong Shaoxi's extravagant flattery, Duan Suqing was so shocked that he was almost dumbfounded. After ending the call, Duan Suqing thought for a long time. He concluded that the Xiao Chang that Gong Xiaoxi spoke of was definitely a mysterious expert hidden in the immortal cultivation world, or a disciple of some top-notch faction. As the saying goes, a great expert hides in the city. It could be for training or it could be to avoid the struggles of the upper echelons. This mysterious expert would stay in the unknown Yanlin town and hide in the Qin family. If it was not because the disciples of the Tranquil Forest sect had coincidentally gone to find trouble with the Qin family, he would not have lent a helping hand. As a result, Gong Xiaoxi ran to the Qin family and witnessed his true abilities. Thinking up to this point, Duan Suqing decisively sent someone to summon the vice sect leader, Xian Zhaoshan, and briefly explain the situation. Then he ordered Xian Zhaoshan to immediately go to the Qin family and invite Xiao Chen to the Burning Sky faction. Chapter 1380. Duan Suqing's purpose was very simple. Firstly, he wanted to see this expert with his own eyes. Secondly, he wanted to ask for his advice to see if he could break through again. Thirdly, he wanted to find out if he could help the Burning Sky faction. After understanding Duan Suqing's intention, Xian Zhaoshan naturally did not dare to be negligent. After coming out, he saw that it was already late. He tidied up a little and informed Gong Xiaoxi. The next morning he left Luxian Prefecture and set off for Yanlin town. When Xian Zhaoshan arrived at the Qin clan in Yanlin town, the sky had just brightened. Qin Shengling was already waiting at the gate with a group of servants. Yesterday, after Gong Xiaoxi received the vice leader's notice, he immediately told Qin Shengling. Qin clan master also knew that Xian Zhaoshan must have come for deity Xiao. However, the sudden arrival of the vice leader of Luxian Prefecture's power faction was also a matter of honor for the Qin clan. Therefore, Qin Shengling had arranged a welcoming ceremony early in the morning and patiently waited for Xian Zhaoshan's arrival at the gate. Gong Xiaoxi also came with Qin Shengling. However, Xiao Chen did not follow. Although Gong Xiaoxi also told him about this yesterday, Xiao Chen was not interested in waking up early in the morning to receive a vice leader. Moreover, because of his special identity, Gong Xiaoxi and Qin Shengling could not invite him even if they wanted to. Therefore, he naturally did not show up at the gate. Vice leader Xian, your presence really brings light to our humble Qin clan. Seeing Xian Zhaoshan coming from afar, Qin Shengling immediately greeted him with a face full of smiles and a loud and clear voice. Seeing the lineup at the Qin clan's gate, Xian Zhaoshan also felt quite honored. He chuckled and cupped his hands, saying, "Clan Master Qin is too polite. If you had not found such a powerful expert, I'm afraid I would not have come to your residence as a guest. Speaking of which, it was thanks to you that Xiaoxi was able to successfully advance to the nascent soul stage. Vice Leader Xian is too kind. This old man is ashamed." Hearing this, Qin Shengling blushed and could only say a few words casually. In Xian Zhaoshan's heart, the Qin clan was only a small clan that was not worth mentioning. How could they have the ability to find an expert like deity Xiao to hold down the fort? If Qin Taotian hadn't run into the immortal cultivator by chance and been inspired to follow her, he probably wouldn't have had the chance to meet an immortal cultivator of such a level in his life. If one really had to describe it, it could only be said that Qin Taotian had cultivated his good fortune for several lifetimes to be able to meet an expert like exalted immortal Xiao. Xian Zhaoshan exchanged some pleasantries with Qin Shengling and then turned to Gong Xiaoxi and said, "Xiaoxi, where is the master you mentioned?" "Since I'm already here, let's go meet him." "Oh, master is chatting with master's wife in the living room. Vice sect leader Xian, follow me." Gong Xiaoxi stood to the side with his hands clasped behind his back. When he heard Xian Zhaoshan's urging, he smiled and nodded. He did not care about the etiquette at all. He turned around and led the way through the main door, swaggering toward the guest hall. Xian Zhaoshan did not say anything and hurriedly followed. Qin Shengling, who was following closely behind, was a little puzzled when he saw that. This Xian Zhaoshan was obviously a vice sect leader. Why did Gong Xiaoxi not seem to care about him at all? He actually said a few words to himself and left just like that. Could it be that his position in the Burning Sky faction was higher than that of the vice sect leader? But wasn't he just a deacon elder? Actually, Qin Shengling did not know much about the Burning Sky faction, so he did not know the reason behind it. Although Gong Xiaoxi was only an elder, his father was the Grand Elder of the Burning Sky faction. Moreover, he was a rare immortal cultivator expert in the Luxian Prefecture. During the Burning Sky faction's heyday, Gong Xiaoxi's father was there to oversee the faction. Therefore, usually when Duan Suqing saw Gong Xiaoxi, he would have a warm expression, and Xian Zhaoshan would also give him some face. A son's status depended on his father's status, so naturally Gong Xiaoxi's status was not low. Of course, what he did not know was that ever since Gong Xiaoxi's father was injured, Gong Xiaoxi had also become a lot more low-key. Today he was so arrogant because he had an even more arrogant master. Immortal Master Vice Sect Leader Xian, whom I mentioned to you yesterday, is here now. He wants to invite you to the Burning Sky faction as a guest. What do you think? Gong Xiaoxi impatiently asked the moment he stepped into the guest hall. At this moment Xiaoqian was chatting with Hongzhu. After hearing Gong Xiaoxi's question, he pondered for a moment, then shook his head and said, I don't think I have the time to go there for the time being. I still have to stay in the Qin clan for a while before thinking about the next plan. Xiaoqian also had his own concerns. He was worried that if he went to the Burning Sky faction as a guest, if the secluded forest sect sent a few more nascent soul experts to provoke the Qin clan, Gong Xiaoxi, who had just reached the nascent soul stage, might not be able to hold up the facade. At the very least, he would be beaten up, and the lives of the Qin clan members would also be in danger. Halfway through Xiaoqian's words, Xian Zhaoshan also entered the door. He and Qin Shengling fell behind, so they did not hear the entire conversation. They only heard that Xiaoqian rejected the invitation to the Burning Sky faction. After sizing up Xiaoqian, who was sitting on the seat, Xian Zhaoshan's expression was a little surprised. He thought to himself, I wonder what relationship this young man has with that expert? To actually make a decision for him without permission, it seems like his status is not low. Could it be that he is his eldest disciple? While Xian Zhaoshan was pondering, Gong Xiaoxi had already turned around. Smiling, he spread his hands and said, Vice Sect Leader Xian, you heard everything, right? My immortal master is not free recently, so he won't be going to the Burning Sky faction. Is there anything else? If there isn't, then hurry back and report to Sect Leader Duan. Otherwise, Sect Leader will still be waiting there. What did you just say? He's your master? Xian Zhaoshan was stunned and could not help but blurt out. Only now did he realize that this young man was the very awesome immortal master that Gong Xiaoxi mentioned. Yes, what's wrong? Gong Xiaoxi looked at Xian Zhaoshan with a blank expression. He had no idea what Xian Zhaoshan was so surprised about. After Xian Zhaoshan received a definite answer from Gong Xiaoxi, he carefully sized up Xiaoqian again in disbelief. He really could not connect this young man with some perfected nascent soul top-notch cultivator. Xiaoxi, come out with me for a while. I have some questions to ask you. Xian Zhaoshan suddenly thought of another possibility. His expression changed slightly and he said this sternly. Then he flicked his sleeves, turned around and left the guest room. Xian Zhaoshan had just stormed out when he bumped into Qin Shengling, who was about to enter the door. Xian Zhaoshan ignored him and walked away without looking back. Qin Shengling, on the other hand, was confused. He walked into the guest room with a baffled look on his face. He looked left and right, completely unaware of what had happened, and did not know how to ask. He was very embarrassed for a moment. Chapter 1381. Gong Xiaoxi shook his head and apologized to Xiaoqian helplessly before following behind Xian Zhaoshan. Xian Zhaoshan strode forward until he reached a corner before he was stopped by Gong Xiaoxi, who caught up from behind. Vice Sect Leader Xian, what are you doing? Gong Xiaoxi's expression was a little displeased as he complained. What is it that you can't say in front of my master? Why are you acting so sneakily? Xiaoxi, have you been tricked by that kid? Xian Zhaoshan's face darkened as he asked in a low voice. He's so young, how could he be an expert cultivator? Could it be that the Tranquil Forest sect purposely set up a ruse to trick you into taking the bait? In Xian Zhaoshan's mind, an immortal cultivator who was able to reach the perfected nascent soul stage must have at least gone through dozens or hundreds of years of arduous cultivation before he could succeed. Based on his age, he should be a loyal elder. He didn't expect to see a young kid today. Shoo. Gong Xiaoxi was shocked and quickly looked to his left and right. When he saw that there was no one nearby, he finally relaxed and made a shushing gesture to Xian Zhaoshan. He said in an extremely displeased tone, Vice Sect Leader Xian, how can you speak like this? Aren't you being too disrespectful to my master? What do you mean by that kid and that kid? Just because of that little... Xian Zhaoshan wanted to scold Xiaoqian when he saw Gong Xiaoxi still speaking like this. However, he was interrupted by Gong Xiaoxi halfway through his sentence. Vice Sect Leader Xian, you'd better watch your mouth. My master, Exalted Immortal Xiao, is a true expert. What do you mean by slandering him like this? Gong Xiaoxi's expression was a little gloomy and he seemed to be on the verge of exploding. Xian Zhaoshan originally wanted to say something disrespectful, but when he saw Gong Xiaoxi's attitude, he could only swallow the profanity that he had prepared and changed his words. Anyway, no matter how I look at it, your master is only a young man around 20 years old. How is it possible that he could cultivate to such a high level in just 20 years? Unless he has cultivated some kind of technique to preserve his youthful looks, a cultivator at the peak of the nascent soul stage would never look so young. I don't know about that. Moreover, as his disciple, I won't ask about these useless things. After all, not only have I personally experienced exalted deity Zhao's strength, I have also personally witnessed him crippling that old thing with the surname Ying from the Tranquil Forest sect. If you really don't believe me, then there's nothing I can do. Gong Xiaoxi spread out his hands and said casually. To Gong Xiaoxi, he did not care at all whether or not exalted immortal Xiao had learned the eternal youth technique. So what if he was really only 20 years old? Strength was the absolute way of the king. Xian Zhaoshan was speechless when she heard Gong Xiaoxi's insistence. She opened her mouth but didn't know what to say. Although Xian Zhaoshan believed that Gong Xiaoxi wouldn't lie to him and didn't doubt what he said, Xiao Chen looked too young. It felt weird to associate him with the peak of nascent soul stage. Alright, you don't have to say this and that. Gong Xiaoxi waved his hand and didn't let Xian Zhaoshan continue speaking. He said calmly, since exalted deity master has already rejected you, don't go in and make him angry. Why don't you first report the situation to sect leader Duan and then let him make a decision? Sigh, alright. This is the only thing we can do now. Xian Zhaoshan sighed helplessly and looked left and right. After thinking for a while, he said, then I will first find a suitable place to contact the sect leader. When I have confirmed the news, I will use the directed audio amulet to inform you. Xian Zhaoshan felt that the situation was a little complicated. If he found a place to contact Duan Suqing in the Qin clan, it was very likely that he wouldn't be able to explain things clearly. If he returned to the Luxian prefecture, it would be a waste of time and effort. It was better to find an inn and use the directed audio amulet to report in detail to the sect leader. Then you go. I will go back to find my exalted deity master. Gong Xiaoxi could also understand Xian Zhaoshan's thoughts and didn't try to keep him. Xian Zhaoshan gave a few simple instructions to Gong Xiaoxi and looked in the direction of the guest hall. Then he turned around and hurriedly left the Qin clan. Seeing Gong Xiaoxi return to the guest hall alone, Qin Shengling, who was originally a little uneasy, was instantly stunned. He looked behind him for a long time but didn't see Xian Zhaoshan's figure. He could only carefully ask, Elder Gong, why didn't that deputy sect leader Xian return with you? Did our Qin clan treat him poorly in any way and made him angry? No, he suddenly had an urgent matter to attend to, so he went out for a while. Don't worry, old clan leader Qin. He is usually very strange and doesn't act properly. He has nothing to do with your Qin clan, so please don't take it to heart. Gong Xiaoxi waved his hand carelessly and said casually. With regards to Xian Zhaoshan's departure, Gong Xiaoxi didn't seem to mind at all. Instead, he looked for Xiao Chen in high spirits and chatted about the topic of cultivation, hoping that he would be able to make some gains after breaking through to the nascent soul realm. Qin Shengling was confused as he listened. He thought to himself, what kind of show is the Burning Sky faction playing? Could it be that they failed to invite exalted deity Xiao, and Xian Zhaoshan left angrily out of humiliation and anger? Isn't that a little too arrogant? A faint smile hung on the corner of Xiao Chen's mouth. Although Xian Zhaoshan and Gong Xiaoxi deliberately walked very far away and even lowered their voices, under his powerful divine sense, he could still hear everything clearly. After listening to the argument, Xiao Chen felt that Xian Zhaoshan was really a person with a bad character. Wasn't he just a little young? What problem could there be? He actually pulled out the trick of injuring himself to gain the confidence of others. What kind of youthful technique is this? Could it be that I went to South Korea for an injection to make adjustments to my appearance? If I really wanted to harm the Burning Sky faction, there was no need for me to create so many problems. Wouldn't it be much easier to just go and find trouble with them? However, Xiao Chen only thought about these things in his heart. He had seen this kind of situation many times, so he naturally didn't find it strange. He still chatted with Gong Xiaoxi from time to time. Xian Zhaoshan hurriedly left the Qin family and casually found an inn in Yanlin town to stay. Without any delay, he directly prepared a basin of water and soaked it in a sound-transmitting talisman, waiting for Duan Suqing's reply. Is it Zhaoshan? How did it go? Not long after, Duan Suqing's voice came out from the basin of water along with a few bubbles. Sect Master, I've already arrived at the Qin clan and met Gong Shaoxi and the exalted deity master he mentioned, but the matter seems a little strange. Xian Zhaoxin hesitated for a moment, not knowing how to describe the matter. Should he say that the other party had a youthful technique, or should he directly say that he thought that the other party was here to trick the Burning Sky faction? Chapter 1382. What's wrong? What's wrong? Are you in trouble? Duan Suqing's voice was a bit muffled and he sounded quite unhappy. Xian Zhaoxin took a deep breath and decided to talk about another matter first. That upper immortal refused to come, and said he wanted to stay at the Qin clan for a while. What? Duan Suqing quickly replied. How did you invite him? Did you express our Burning Sky sect's sincerity? Actually, Xian Zhaoxin touched his nose awkwardly and said, Actually, Gong Shaoxi invited him. I didn't have time to speak. Didn't have time to speak? Duan Suqing's voice was a bit surprised. Could it be that this upper immortal hated Burning Sky sect so much that you were driven out before you even spoke? That's not it. After I entered the door, I found that something was not quite right, so I came out. Xian Zhaoxin replied helplessly. What's wrong? You've been talking for so long, why haven't you gotten to the point? Duan Suqing's tone was a bit impatient. He felt that Xian Zhaoxin was hammering here and there and couldn't get to the point. Xian Zhaoxin paused and still honestly said, that cultivator looked very young, like he was only about 20 years old. I think, he didn't seem to be at the level of nascent soul peak. About 20 years old? This time, Duan Suqing's voice came out after a while, but it was very calm. That's normal. You know too little about the immortal cultivation world. Some secluded sects and families have many heavenly materials and earthly treasures and wonderful mental cultivation methods. The juniors they train are not only strong but also very young. There's nothing strange about that. The most important thing is that they have elixirs that can keep their faces. Oh. Xian Zhaoxin didn't think of this reason. After a while he continued, I asked Gong Shaoxi if that person had some kind of face-keeping technique, and he said he wasn't too sure, so I came to report this situation to you first. As for what needs to be done later, I'll leave it to you to decide. What? Duan Suqing turned pale with fright, and his urgent voice immediately came over. You can't be asking Gong Shaoxi in front of that upper immortal, right? You want to kill Burning Sky sect? No. Xian Zhaoxin was shocked. She waved her hands at the basin and explained hurriedly, I purposely dragged Gong Shaoxi to a place far away to ask him. There was no one around, so the Supreme Immortal would never know. That's good. Duan Suqing patted his chest and heaved a long sigh of relief. In his heart, he was annoyed that this Xian Zhaoxin always took big breaths when he spoke, causing him to almost be scared out of his wits. Only then did Xian Zhaoxin realize that his actions were a little rash. Xian Zhaoxin's face turned pale when he realized that he might have offended a Supreme Immortal without realizing it. He stammered, Sect leader, what should we do next? Huh? Duan Suqing pondered for a while and then sent the message over. In my opinion, the reason that High Immortal isn't willing to come to the Burning Heaven sect is probably because the people we invited are still too weak, and they don't like us, so they aren't willing to come. Xian Zhaoxin didn't say anything. This too weak person was still standing in front of the basin. Did he have to go over and nod his head in agreement? How about this, you wait for me in the inn. I'll prepare some gifts and then come over personally. I'll meet up with you first and then we'll go look for that Supreme Immortal together. Duan Suqing couldn't care less about Xian Zhaoxin's emotions. He directly made his decision and cut off the connection. After listening to Xian Zhaoxin's description, Duan Suqing didn't have any doubts because of Xiao Chen's young age. Instead, his intention to recruit him increased. That was why he decided to personally go to the Qin clan to invite Xiao Chen over. Duan Suqing's action, on one hand, was to show the Burning Heaven sect's respect for Xiao Chen. On the other hand, he hoped to rope him in. If he could really make the Supreme Immortal happy, he could take the opportunity to build a connection with the forces behind him. Then, the Burning Heaven sect wouldn't need to fight to the death with the Tranquil Forest sect anymore. The Burning Heaven sect would once again become the #1 sect in the Luxian prefecture. After the communication with Xian Zhaoxin came to an end, Duan Suqing immediately urged his disciples to prepare a few generous gifts, and then left for Yanlin town without stopping. There was no need to keep track of the time on the road. Duan Suqing reached Yanlin town at his fastest speed. After finding Xian Zhaoxin who was staying at the inn, the two of them didn't plan to inform Gong Xiaoxi in advance. They took the gifts and went straight to the Qin clan. In the Qin clan, Gong Xiaoxi and the others had just finished their lunch. Xiao Qin was guiding him on how to cultivate more effectively, while Qin Shengling was handling some affairs in the front hall. Coincidentally, he received Duan Suqing and Shen Zhaoxin. Qin Shengling didn't dare to be negligent. After receiving the two of them properly, he immediately found a servant to inform him. Supreme Immortal Xiao, Sect Leader Duan and Vice Sect Leader Shen of the Burning Heaven Sect are here. They said they want to meet you. The servant heard that Xiao Qin was guiding Elder Gong in his cultivation, so he jogged to Gong Xiaoxi's room. After knocking on the door and getting a response, he entered the room and reported in a loud and respectful voice. Why are they here again? They don't have anything else to do, right? Running to the Qin clan all day, aren't they tired? Gong Xiaoxi had just been enlightened a little and was in the midst of cultivating. He couldn't help but frown when he heard this. It was obvious that he was very unhappy with the two of them visiting. Forget it. Since they are so sincere, then let's go and meet them. Just treat it as a meal to digest. Xiao Qin didn't have any objections. He patted Gong Xiaoxi's shoulder and walked to the guest hall. Supreme Immortal Master, wait for me. Gong Xiaoxi hurriedly got up and followed behind Xiao Qin. He was still muttering. Previously they were talking nonsense. Now that they finally know how powerful our Supreme Immortal Master is, they should quickly come and apologize, right? Xiao Qin, who was walking in front, smiled faintly and asked casually, from your tone, it seems like you don't like them very much? They are the sect leader and vice sect leader of the Burning Heaven sect. They belong to the people who hold power in the sect. Don't tell me that you, a deacon elder, can be more powerful than them? Supreme Immortal Master, it's my fault. I forgot to explain it to you before. Gong Xiaoxi raised his chin and said with a faint sense of pride, actually, my father is the Supreme Elder of the Burning Heaven sect. He is also the most powerful existence in our sect. Although Sect Leader Duan and Vice Sect Leader Xian are in charge of the Burning Heaven sect, they have always been respectful to my father and don't dare to be disrespectful. Chapter 1383. So you. Xiao Qin looked at Gong Xiaoxi and thought to himself, no wonder when he was chatting with Shen Zhaoxin outside, his tone was not polite. This guy was a typical celestial second generation. Gong Xiaoxi scratched his head and said with an embarrassed smile, He, Immortal Master's guess is correct. Due to my father, my authority is not lower than theirs. Usually, I don't have to listen to their instructions. Xiao Qin nodded his head and suddenly thought of another question. He asked, that's strange. Since your father is the Grand Supreme Elder, then he should be the one in charge of the Burning Sky faction. Why would he assign it to someone else? Exalted Master, you may not know this, but my father was distracted during his training. He did not put his heart into it, so he accidentally went berserk. Although his life was saved, his cultivation level was greatly reduced due to his injuries. So he is still recuperating in the faction. I estimate that it will take a few years for him to recover. Gong Xiaoxi explained with a bitter face. If his father did not go berserk and get injured, the Burning Sky faction would not have become the second largest faction in Luxian Prefecture, and the secluded forest sect would not have taken the lead. I see. Xiao Qin finally understood the ins and outs. He thought for a while and said, if there's a chance, I'll visit your father. I'll also help him heal his injuries. It'll be your reward for being a servant in the Qin family. However, the Burning Sky faction will have to find your own way to treat the illness. I don't have any spirit crystals on me. Considering that he would have to leave the Qin family sooner or later, Xiao Qin decided to pave a way out first. As long as the Burning Sky faction became the backing of the Qin family, he would be able to leave with peace of mind. Is that true? That's great. Gong Xiaoxi's eyes were filled with disbelief. He excitedly patted his chest and said, Exalted Master, if you can cure my father, no matter how expensive the heaven and earth treasures are, the Burning Sky faction is willing to pay for them all. We will definitely not let you spend any more money. I thank you on behalf of my father. Xiao Qin originally wanted to ask further about Gong Xiaoxi's father's condition, but the two of them had already walked to the living room, so he could only give up. In the guest room, Xian Zhaoxin and Qin Shengling were chatting, while a white-robed old man with white hair and a youthful complexion sat beside them. Judging from the seating arrangement of the three and the respect the two of them showed to him, this person was undoubtedly the Burning Sky faction's sect master Duan. Seeing Xiaochen and Gong Xiaoxi walk in, the three of them stopped chatting. Qin Shengling stood up and was about to introduce them, but the white-robed old man spoke first. "Ha! This handsome young man must be Xiaoxi's master, right?" Since the other party was so enthusiastic, Xiaochen couldn't be too indifferent, so he nodded slightly and said lightly, "I'm Xiao Chong, may I know who this is?" Sect Master Duan looked at Xiaochen calmly and secretly praised him for being a young hero. When he heard Xiaochen's question, he also generously cupped his hands and said with a smile, "I'm Duan Suqing, the Burning Sky Faction Sect Master." This morning, Vice Sect Master Xian left without saying goodbye because he had an urgent matter to attend to. "I hope Exalted Immortal Xiao won't be offended." "Oh, it's not a big deal." Xiaochen smiled slightly and waved his hand saying, "May I know why Sect Master Duan has come to the Qin family this time? If you still want me to go to the Burning Sky Faction as a guest, then I can only apologize in advance because I can't leave the Qin family for the time being. I'm afraid Sect Master Duan will be disappointed." In fact, Xiaochen still had a good impression of the Burning Sky Faction, and Sect Master Duan Suqing's attitude was also very sincere. However, because of Xiaochen's own concerns, he still politely refused before Duan Suqing could open his mouth to avoid causing embarrassment on both sides. "Haha, that Exalted Immortal Xiao is really a straightforward person." Duan Suqing's old face turned slightly red. He didn't expect that before he had time to say his request, the other party had already opened his mouth to decline. Hearing that Duan Suqing actually admitted it, Gong Xiaoxi, who was standing to the side, was also a little surprised. He originally thought that after Xian Zhaoshan flicked his sleeves and left, this matter would be over. He didn't expect that even Sect Master Duan would personally come to invite him now. It seemed that he also attached great importance to his master. After being refused twice in a row, Xian Zhaoshan's face was a little embarrassed. Duan Suqing's expression was as usual. He only hesitated a little, then continued to ask, "I wonder if it's convenient for me to know why Exalted Immortal Xiao is not willing to go to our Burning Sky Faction as a guest?" "Sect Master Duan, since my master doesn't want to go, please don't ask for the reason." Gong Xiaoxi panicked and hurriedly opened his mouth to stop him. Xian Zhaoshan had just agreed to help treat his father's illness. If he was angry and refused to go just because of a few words from you, wouldn't that be a great loss? "It doesn't matter. Since Sect Master Duan wants to know, there's no harm in a simple explanation." Xiaochen didn't care and said what was in his heart. "It's like this. A few days ago, an old fellow from the secluded forest sect came to the Qin family to provoke them, and I crippled him. Because I didn't kill him directly, I let him go, so I'm worried that their sect will send more experts to seek revenge." "So that's how it is." Duan Suqing suddenly came to a realization. He felt slightly comforted and blurted out, "I thought Exalted Immortal Xiao was dissatisfied with our Burning Sky Faction. So it turns out that you're worried that the secluded forest sect will seek revenge." "Sect Master Duan, you've misunderstood." Xiaochen pointed at Gong Xiaoxi and smiled faintly. Although Gong Xiaoxi is holding down the fort at the Qin clan, he has just broken through to the nascent soul stage. What if the enemy attacks after I leave? If Gong Xiaoxi isn't strong enough and can't defeat them, won't he be causing trouble for the Qin clan? So, about going to the Burning Sky Faction, let's talk about it later. Exalted Immortal Xiao, you worry too much. After understanding the inside story, Duan Suqing completely relaxed. He couldn't help but burst into laughter and said brightly, "You don't have to worry about this. The secluded forest sect's strength is similar to our Burning Sky Faction. Ing Taichi is already the most powerful person in their sect. Now that that old thing has been crippled by you, they won't have any ability to take revenge." "Is that true?" Xiaochen was slightly stunned. He didn't expect the secluded forest sect to be so weak. They were too useless, weren't they? The most powerful person in the sect was only at the 3rd level of the original infant stage? If he had known this earlier, he would have gone straight to their door and wiped them out. He wouldn't have wasted so many days. Seeing Xiaochen's shocked expression, Duan Suqing stroked his white beard and said with a faint smile, "Moreover, the secluded forest sect now thinks that the whole thing was planned by our Burning Sky Faction. So, if they want to take revenge, they will take revenge on us. They won't involve the Qin family." You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.